Okay, this is about what is it? Shadiversity's book. And since I couldn't find where to read it or like even listen to it, this is gonna suffice as a type of introduction for it. So without further ado, let's jump into it.
There is another outside to criticism of my book where it's like they say it's objectively bad and then they just lie about it constantly. So if Anthony is wanting to review my book, I'd be interested to see if he'd be honest about it. And look, if he doesn't like it, perfectly fine.
Well, sorry for taking so long to accept your challenge, Shad, but here we are. Shadow of the Conqueror is one
Mm-hmm.
of those legendarily bad works. But when it came out, it was kind of an event, really. Shadiversity at the time was one of
Interesting.
the biggest sword YouTubers around, and he had spent up until this point about like a half a decade making content about fantasy, medieval sword fighting, and all the like. But now he made a novel. He wrote a novel after all this time of admiring the works of writers like Brandon Sanderson. What would it be like? Would it be any good? Was it about sword fighting, or was it about something deeper?
So the book essentially is about the story of the former tyrannical ruler of a fantasy world after he's defeated and is living in hiding and has come to realize full magnitude of his crimes. He is confronted by the fallout, the results of his actions.
He talked about it being a work discussing the sheer limits of what a person can do before they're irredeemable. At the time, booktubers like Dan Green promoted it.
One of the most objective and fair reviews you can find about is actually Daniel Green's review of Shadow the Conqueror, and has even made a follow-up video after the fact saying that, on retrospect, he likes it even more.
Shadow of the Conqueror by Shad Brooks. This is a book I directly said in my review, I need to see the sequels to figure out how I'm going to feel on this because it sets up a lot. It makes grand promises, and Shad Brooks does not back down in any way, shape, or form, I feel like, setting up exactly the storyline he wants to. But I've actually thought about this book more than I thought I would. It's stuck with me in greater ways than I would have ever predicted. And so I want to just give a tip of the hat in that sense. It's got some rougher
Milady,
edges.
tipping
It's
my
clearly
head.
an early novel from an author, but it's an admirable early novel from an author. Shadow of the Conqueror. Oh, Jesus. Of the
A little while later.
Conqueror. My own personal extreme disliking of the author's right-wing turn in recent years. Shadow of the Conqueror, I remember I couldn't make up my mind on it, even back then. We never got a sequel, as far as I know of. I said I needed to read more to see where things were building to understand where things were going before I could really give an opinion. And I honestly don't remember the book that well.
Good sign, I guess. So bad you don't remember it.
I'm just gonna go. I read that because I don't remember it well enough to really give thoughts, and I don't think I was a very good reviewer back then anyway.
Most people
Damn.
bought it but didn't read it. And yeah, that's where I actually was for a while. I bought it, I bought the audiobook, I had it, and then it just kind of sat on the shelf until now. Shadiversity has spent the last several years criticizing other works of media, and Shadow the Conqueror is in many ways a reflection of Shad. It's what he wants in media.
There are a lot of people that love specifically that style of writing. It's very much in the vein of Wheel of Time. I'm a massive Wheel of Time fan.
Wheel
as
of
you
Time.
should see. They're barely on the edge, but all the entire Wheel of Time series is up there. And I love the detailed descriptions and the slower pace of it. And that's the type of the stuff that I like to emulate.
It's an overly complicated work that is not complex. It spends more time obsessing over technical details of magic, sword fighting, and world building than, say, actually telling a story that's compelling. The work is a hodgepodge of Paul Atreides in a Cosmere-esque world, but without the ingenuity of Sanderson or Herbert. Now, unlike a lot of work made by people I consider to be grifters, this isn't a cynical product. Shad tried. He really tried with this. This isn't
That's
like
the
Eric
best you
July's
can do,
Isom or
actually.
some shit like that. Shad actually wanted this to be good. And so to give the book the effort it deserves, I decided to put my effort into reviewing this. This won't just be a simple, oh, I don't like the book, oh, this sucks. I'm actually going to try my best to communicate what happens in the book bit by bit, using these wonderful little avatars drawn by
That's kind of cute.
Crimson Ender, So if nothing else, say thank you, Krim, for helping me bring this
Immediately
book to
running
some
decision to
semblance of
hell.
life. Look, let's not beat around the bush. This book's terrible. It's absolute dreck. But I think by
Wow.
breaking it down, we might see the ways it almost could have been something. We see the shortcomings and decisions that led to it being the failure that it is, and that's more interesting to me than anything else. I think it's kind of fascinating how Shad took the building blocks of writing, but assembled them in a way that makes them completely terrible. It makes him look like a hypocrite for all
Completely
the years of
terrible.
criticism he's levied against the
That is
woke
golden.
properties he hates so much. Because now
Honestly, that's like what a way to show his what was it, criticism. It's like Peach with an outfit. Yeah, no slagging wonder, my guy. That's like that's her iconic racing outfit, and he just loses his shab over it. Like, jeez.
actuality, this work is everything wrong with his side of the aisle, all rolled up into one neat package. The story starts with a basic scene. An old man, having lived a life of wickedness and cruelty, deciding to end everything. This man is Dalen. As a young man, he was a hero, leading an army against the forces of darkness known as the Shade during an event called the Fourth Night, an era of near unlimited darkness where armies of monsters from the underneath the ground where there's no light, came topside. From
Undertale.
there, he led his forces to overthrow the decadent aristocracy. He used his knowledge of mechanics and engineering to build Magitech airships and magical devices. He repaved the roads and infrastructure. But in the process, he killed 28 million people and ravaged countless souls for his own personal pleasure. Yeah, 28 million. Bit of a big number there. However, at some point, he was overthrown. The monoculture he created became a diverse population of different cultures and different nations. While he lives in exile, having faked his own death, now he lives as an old tinkerer, unknown and forgotten. And he sets off to end his cruel life in an absurdly over-the-top fashion. He jumps off the edge of the world, because the world's flat in this universe, holding both a sunstone and a
Convenient.
darkstone, two items that can channel the powers of light or repel it. The magic system of this world based on light. I should mention that right now. The book will make sure you don't forget that. However, when he does so, he tumbles through the horizon. It's like a looping world, essentially. And as he travels through the barrier with both stones in hand, he is magically restored to his youth and survives his fall. Yeah, through the sky. He survives falling off the edge of the world and ends up on the ground somehow.
How?
With incredible magic powers and a second chance of life, because of course he gets magical powers from this, of course he does. He decides to do some good, not by improving the infrastructure or trying to fix the damage he caused, but by killing bad guys. He returns home and takes the identity of his own son, also named Dalen for convenience sake, having come back to take his magic +1 awesome special sword. He ends up saddled with Auric, a wandering lightbringer and grandmaster swordsman, and he's pursued the whole while by Lyra and Cusack, two archknights who are in hot
Well, why is Cusack redacted? Why is he? What? They couldn't draw him?
pursuit of a figure demonstrating incredible power without any source known. Dalen wants to go to the capital to fuddle with paperwork, to reinvent himself, to fake his own birth, thus allowing him to fully escape the consequences of his own actions. And along the way, he hands out vigilante justice to those he hates. Those who do wrong. With that description, there's potential there, right? It's not a terrible hook, honestly. A bad person seeks redemption through good deeds. There's a lot of stories like that. I mean, that's the plot of Rurouni Kenshin, Trigun, Unforgiven. There's a lot of times you can do a story like that and it works.
You beat William Money out of Missouri. Killer women and children. That's right.
So this begs the very important question: what can possibly go wrong? Well, the better
Assuming
question is,
everything?
what can go right? Our protagonist is Dalen, a blue-haired social justice warrior who has pronouns also.
the The chart being literally everything but charisma is 2.
So, of course, he kind of sucks, let's be honest. We're informed about Dalen's past primarily through expository dialogue, both through his self-aggrandizing letter about himself, an entry of which starts off every chapter like this is the Princess Irulan's diary in Dune.
The beginning is a very delicate time.
And through other characters saying Dalen sucks. The full scope of why Dalen sucks does not occur until much later. I think it's the second to last chapter, third to last chapter. It says he killed 28 million people specifically. That's kind of left hidden for a while. Couldn't imagine why you buried Leo in that one, Shad. Immediately we're confronted with a complication in Dalen's character. Nothing he does quite matches up to the version of him that we're told about. We're told he's a monster early on, but we're also shown him giving away his wealth to those around him, imparting wisdom where possible. And he just generally is a cranky old man early on, but like, okay, whatever. The only indication that this man is a bastard is that he says the R word a lot. In other words, he talks like Shad does in real life.
We bringers try to bring as much brightness as we can bring. He leaned in a bit closer and said conspiratorially, "That's why we're called bringers." Dalen frowned as if he had just tasted something foul. I hope that wasn't some retarded attempt at humor. Seeing as I'm not mentally disabled, I would have to say no. It was a simple joke. No, if you think that was a joke, you most definitely are mentally disabled.
Must definitely are mentally disabled. Is that actually how it's written? You most definitely are mentally disabled.
Mentally disabled.
Knowing the author, it's hard to see this as intentionally him representing the character as bad when he's talking like Shad does.
And look,
Are you upset that Lois Lane will figure out who Clark Kent is?
did I say that, you friggin' disingenuous moron?
I'm sorry, even editing, I forgot how fucking funny that was. In a lot of ways, Dalen does feel like a self-insert based on how he talks and interacts with others, because we have hundreds of hours of Shad talking and acting the same way. The point is, the text does not present Shad. I'm sorry, what's the Shad there? Does not present Dalen as particularly evil, just that he's Shad with blue hair. Dalen is presented as a quote-unquote great man, someone who brought about great change despite terrible actions. Great men can commit terrible actions and terrible sins, of course, but if they got the trains to arrive on time, that's good. He will flip-flop between sage-like and giving grand advice, talking like an edgy
suplexing the
kid in a
train.
Call of Duty lobby, and just being a violent fucking sociopath.
Oh.
Sometimes he'll just flip through all three on the same page. It's incredibly jarring and makes it hard to actually care about Dalen, because he'll go from lamenting his sins to seeking to do good by helping those around him to just fucking murdering people. And I don't just mean like he does a little bit of killing here and there or it's a sword fight. I mean some real Freddy Krueger shit. Early on, a mugger tries to rob Dalen in his sleep. Now, logically, he's going to need to fight this guy, and you can assume it might be to the death. Any normal situation, yeah, that makes sense. In a normal fantasy story, even a dark fantasy story, a guy who might be trying to seek redemption might try to find a non-lethal way to subdue this guy, and maybe fail. A story that might show a person struggling to move past their old sins may show them swing wildly, cleaving the foe apart, only to regret how easy the action of killing came. But Dalen doesn't do just that. He goes a little further. First, he cuts off the beggar's hands, which, okay, then he stabs him. Then he chops
Why go for that immediately? The sudden cut straight away, just like, I did not expect it to go like that. What?
easy the action of killing came. But Dalen doesn't do just that. He goes a little further. First, he cuts off the beggar's hands.
Like, straight up, no warning. Just straight up, first off, the manhood goes off.
Which, okay. Then he stabs him. Then he chops that guy's head off. And then he stabs the head with a knife into a wall before smashing said head against the wall. And then he cries. Because he can't believe he would be that violent. Like no, sorry. That goes beyond reasonable violence into hilariously stupid violence.
Not even cartoon violence, just straight up, why keep going after he's dead?
And this
Also, talk about like a beginning, middle, and end to that battle. What?
book excels at giving you stupid shit to laugh at. It is so violent, it transcends upsetting into stupid. And maybe I'm just a horror guy, so I'm used to really violent shit happening in stories, but none of this had any lasting impact. This is not Marquis de Sade. This is not Martyrs. This is like that scene in Dracula Dead and Loving It where they stab the vampire in the chest and the blood sprays out in gusts. That's all the violence here. Cartoonish and stupid, though I think Shad was hoping it would invoke feelings of Berserk. Other times, of course, Dalen will cry, lamenting that his companion Auric lost his family. Spoiler alert, it's also Dalen's fault Auric lost his family. We'll get to that later. But then
good.
he just ruthlessly murders families
All right.
that he thinks are bad. He kills people's parents, he kills entire legions of people, doesn't ask where they came from, doesn't ask questions, just kills them blindly. When Dalen poses as his own son, it becomes clear how he really doesn't want to deal with the consequences of his own actions. But Dalen being stupid is only a small issue. It's the fact that the story pretends he's smart. The guy's a genius, an engineering master, a tinkerer. He knows how to do everything. He's an expert with magic despite learning how to do it yesterday. He's a master swordsman. He's kind of a Mary Sue, honestly, in the traditional sense of the word. But that's just one part of why the book fails. There are very few characters of note in Shadow the Conqueror, other than Dalen. We see a lot of names, but they're kind of nobodies. The only characters who matter are Auric, Lyra, and Cusack. And
Why is he not just okay? Why illustrate the others, but that one, Cusack, was it with a C, is just not present? Why is that?
three are basically vehicles to expand the world in Dalen's story, more than they are actually characters with meaningful arcs. Auric is the most interesting of these three, of course. So he's a Lightbringer, basically a cleric in D&D.
His strength, intelligence, dexterity, wisdom.
Who must always do good and never tell lies, and worships the light from which he derives his power, the light being an entity. And he's given magical abilities by the light, which allow him to heal, create matter, do miracles. Auric has been drawn to Dalen due to a vision he has of Dalen naked. Auric's habits also include making bad jokes that I'm sure is just Shad deliberately writing the lamest joke possible, which, considering Shad can't tell a joke when he's trying, shows Eric can't tell jokes. Eric is basically Dalen's moral compass, and you know, how to explain this guy? You ever play D&D with someone who is really trying to sound like Gandalf, but ends up sounding one of those dads from Footloose?
I don't understand why you feel it necessary to lie to me.
I don't know why you find it necessary to check up on me.
I'm concerned about your well-being, that's all.
That's Auric right there. That's the character. The thing with Auric is that we learn things about him not through his natural action, but through scenes designed to tell us something about a character. We learn he's a grand master swordsman, for example, just out of nowhere. It just kind of happens. He has a family. We learn this in a melodramatic scene with Dalen, who, I mind you, killed millions of people, cries looking at a drawing of Auric drawing his family in a notepad. Now, part of me wonders if Auric is kind of inspired by Shad's brother Jazza, because they're both artists, you know? They have a tendency to draw. I wonder if that's the case. I mean, if Auric was based on Shad, he just materialize the art with magic, like how Shad uses AI to generate imagery, but I digress.
Oh boy. that is a very powerful blow. I think I covered that. Allegedly. I'm not sure, but whatever.
Auric's morals are also surprisingly flexible. Despite being a figurehead of the gods, he is very, very flexible. He balks at Dalen killing abusive women and monsters, but then also effortlessly kills pirates left and right. He can't lie, tell selective truths for personal gain. And Shad never seems to contend with this contradiction in character. Maybe because Shad rejects interesting avenues for characterization in favor of more sword fights. Now, Auric does have an interesting arc in the last fifth of the book. Much later, We find out that Auric only becomes a Lightbringer after losing his entire family and kind of regrets this decision. And we find out why he lost his entire family, again, because Dalen killed them all, in the last fifth of the book. But then there's Lyra and Cusack. Now they're, I guess, interesting because they're Archknights, which are basically D&D paladins who take an oath and gain incredible power of channeling divinity to their personhood. At least that's what we think at first. They're investigating Dalen because he keeps making a scene wherever he goes, from a murder scene to using his powers in public, etc. Lyra is a sex-repulsed warrior, and Cusack is a naked foreigner who sexually harasses Lyra and eats a lot. These
is that why he's? I wanted answers and I got them. Oh my. Griffin hell, what intonation? How is that guy even a paladin in the first place? Like, even if we go by Archknight or whatever that hell he is, how is... Nah, you're tripping.
Traits are supposed to be endearing. They're also their only traits. I should mention it's interesting that Auric and Cusack are both people of color, while Lyra is a woman, considering how often Shad will criticize other works for having people of color and women in.
Indiana Jones, it's my movie, a message to Moths, Barbie, you angry bro. Rings of Power. Wow. Seriously, for girls being
Fantasy.
there?
What isn't surprising, though, is that Lyra will often talk about Cusack being a weird foreigner and people being weird foreigners.
Her arch brother, Cusack, waited for her in the street, the crowds not daring to come within 5 meters of him. Her new companion was a short-statured, backward Shirasian. Not only did he have deep brown skin and short, bright yellow hair that stuck up at the front, he had a prominent mark on his forehead from some savage branding, and wore no shirt under his knight's mantle, leaving his impressively muscled chest bare. Shirasians were considered by many peoples to be very attractive and exotic. Their lack of modesty added a taboo fascination, and in truth, Lyra could admit that Cusack was quite the physical specimen. He stood out, even for an archknight. She intentionally avoided bonding light to her ears on this occasion, as she could predict what the frivolous women were saying nearby as they whispered, pointing to Cusack. Lyra felt uncomfortable with these thoughts, though it wasn't nearly as bad as when they had met. Cusack had been completely naked. It had nearly brought on a panic attack, being the way she was with things like intimacy. As it turned out, Cusack hadn't been making some type of sexual advance. Instead, he claimed to have been providing Lyra the opportunity to master herself more fully, whatever that meant. After a very
whatever that meant.
Lyra could barely keep her nervousness at bay. Cusack covered his loins, sorry that Lyra was so weak-willed that she couldn't control her emotions. She almost knocked him out for all of that, as if she were actually interested in him, or anyone in that way. Cusack was attractive, very attractive, with a body that looked to have been sculpted from stone. But he was also snobbish, rude, and annoying.
But then Cusack comes up with all the ideas for the investigation and is clearly directing what happens in the story. Lyra doesn't come up with any ideas herself.
We need to try and find this boy. Can you track him? Only if I knew his scent, but there's no way for me to know which one is his. This street has had too much traffic. But if no one has been in the same place, you can find his smell? Yes. Good. Then you will find his smell. No, Cusack. I just said too many people have passed by. I can't tell which scent is his. I mean, if I had a piece of his clothing, or if he had stood in a place that no one else had recently, then yes. Cusack's face was blank as usual, but the tone in his voice sounded very condescending. Again, you do not see what is clear to see. This is why I should be the head one. Oh, really? Lyra said, before cynically adding, so what am I missing? We know where this boy stands that no one else stands, Cusack said, pointing to the roof of the building where the boy had fallen from. There was a clear gap at the edge of the roof tiles. Lyra looked and ground her teeth in annoyance, knowing Cusack was right. It wasn't likely that anyone else had been up on the roof since that fall. Let's go check, Lyra said, walking to the building.
Many of her actions are being a liaison between men to do things, but even in the finale, she doesn't do anything herself. She's more directed by men to do something else. So again, she doesn't really do much. But one of Shadow the Conqueror's biggest issues isn't Dalen as a character, it's pacing. Driving conflict keeps reading. What do the characters need? What do they want? What is keeping them from getting to those goals?
Whoa, who the hell is that guy? Guy in black robes. Who that? Guessing we'll find out later, but like, way to go to the interesting parts right off the bat.
That's the real problem early on in the book, because the world building is more important to Shad than characterization and conflict. And that makes the book fucking painful to read. Now, in the interest of fairness, Shad has made it clear this is not an accident, but a choice he deliberately made.
It does depend on personal preference, all right? There's absolutely a writing style that is not enjoyable for a lot of people. I go heavy on descriptions, world building is important, and as a result, some people just do not like that style. But to call it objectively bad, that's not the case, because there are a lot of people that love specifically that style of writing. It's very much in the vein of Wheel of Time. I'm a massive Wheel of Time fan, as you should see. They're barely on the edge, but they're all the entire Wheel of Time series is up there. And I love the detailed descriptions and the slower pace of it. And that's the type of the stuff that I like to emulate. If it's not for everyone, that's fine.
However, I don't think this choice actually helped the book at all. In fact, I think it hindered it a lot. Dalen's core goals in this book is to get from point A to point B, with episodic scenes interspersed between to interrupt. And very little actually happens to prevent him from getting to point A to point B. The internal conflict is obviously, can this unforgivable dictator be redeemed? But that feels disconnected from the moment-to-moment action in the book, because the goal is for Dalen to walk from point A and get to point B. Now, in theory, this isn't a flaw. The Hobbit, for example, is also an episodic story where the characters have to get from point A to point B. But the difference is each chapter serves as essentially a little mini story that must be resolved on the way for Bilbo to get the Smaug and all that. Much of Shadow the Conqueror is not like that. The main conflict is resolved in the last fifth of the novel, really. In Hobbit,
Wow.
each conflict helps Bilbo become the person who he needs to be to confront Smaug. In addition, each chapter provides a different obstacle that needs to be overcome, as well as a different setting and location to expand the world through patient, careful world building. No two chapters feel the same until the end, where all the dangling threads are brought together in the Battle of Five Armies. In contrast, almost every episodic adventure in Shadow the Conqueror focuses on Dalen walking down a path, walking through a city, talking about how cool his weapons are, looting boxes, or finding someone to fight. And every conflict is a fight that is resolved through violence, one that Dalen resolves by just overpowering his opponent with superior skills and magic.
Mushineru.
And few of them materially prevent Dalen from reaching his destination. In fact, many of the conflicts only happen because Dalen sought out a fight or chose some unnecessarily dangerous path forward. Now, Dalen wants
Seriously?
to fight evil, yes, but that's not really, doesn't really further anything. Do these incidents help Dalen grow? Well, not really. In chapter 3, he resolves to fight evil, and he just does that, and nothing changes that perspective. The problem is, there's very little reason to read a work if you don't feel tension. And at very few points in this novel is Dalen ever confronted with a problem he can't solve with either his incredible skills, incredible mechanical knowledge, or just the power of God himself stepping in to save him. The first 7 chapters of the book establish the basis of
Death and
Dalen's
Rebirth.
mission. Chapters 1 through 2 introduces Dalen as an old man and his journey to meet his fate at the edge of the world.
When still young, he had endured the 4th night, when the shade had risen up and cast darkness upon the land. During the night, he had been forced to kill his own parents when they had turned. He came out of the night as a war hero. He tried to feed the people in the
I
wake
can
of
with the
war,
goat
striving
noises.
to work with the old aristocracy. He had seen his wife and young children murdered in front of his own eyes. He had led a rebellion against that oppressive ruling class, overthrowing them and becoming the new leader of his nation. He had rebuilt society and had tried to better it, but he had also killed kings and queens, men, women, and children, many with his own hands. He had destroyed cities, murdered millions, conquered nations, raped, ravaged, and oppressed the world. Dalen looked high into the sky and began began to weep some of the most bitter tears of his life.
He finished with chapter 2.
I was hoping you wouldn't do it, but he still did it. Damn it. I can't. The goat crying is just hilarious.
Chapter 3, he discovers his powers. He is rejuvenated in chapter 3. And chapters 4 through 6 are the journey home. And chapter 7 is him returning home only to meet Eric, a Lightbringer, who informs Dalen of some divine destiny in store for them both. And all 7 of these chapters are some of the longest chapters in the entire book, and 80% of what happens is entirely pointless.
I mean, first 2 chapters establish an old guy trying to jump off the world. Then you have 4 whole chapters of him walking back home. And then the 7th chapter, which is apparently the Lightbringer thing, like, already that's a bit too much. Like, it's straight up extending the book for no reason than to meet an essay quota. 1,000 words of why my book is awesome and why you should read it. Like, straight up. That might be why he doesn't.
For example, chapters 4 and 5 introduce a farmer family who Shad in his narration spends most of the time calling fat or criticizing them for not realizing Dalen, who looks 17, is an experienced fighter. But the real reason this exists is to discuss the world in ways that has no meaningful impact on the reader. They're talking about a world we haven't seen yet. They give him a sword, but that sword's only used to kill the mugger in the next chapter. And that scene too adds nothing to the story other than gore. It's barely mentioned ever again outside of like, oh, you killed this guy at this point, right? They have to bring it up to force it to have relevancy in the book later on. All of this comes across as Dalen resolving to live and hunt evil, which is okay, whatever. He already resolved to hunt evil, so there's no point in that. The only value in this entire section of chapters is there's a scene where he demonstrates his light powers in public, and that draws the attention of Lyra and Cusack, who then proceed to investigate him and his magical powers. Because how can he have the Archknight powers if he's not trained to be an Archknight? It's one of those stupid things. So why include all the other details? What value does the farmer have? It doesn't add anything. And by the way, none of this is including the multitude of scenes where he's just shown training and developing his powers in ways that are just hard to follow. If you're not familiar with the story, none of it means anything. And if you are familiar with the story, it's exhausting because you're waiting for the next plot event to happen. None of it's very informative or clear. So here's a suggestion, Chad. Maybe after he falls, he just wakes up young on the ground and he has to figure out he has powers. And he wanders into the nearest city unarmed because he has no weapons on him and accidentally kills a mugger using his own powers accidentally. And that would cut 4 chapters down into just 1 and eliminate the stupid violent way where he stabs the guy's head, chops it off, this, that, and the other. Cut the chase.
Yeah.
Make it 4 chapters instead of 7. Okay, so now we gotta take a step back here and talk about the world building as a whole, because this is something Shad shoves into the entire book. In the first 20 chapters, especially, roughly half of the book, every bit of dialogue feels like it's used not to further the plot or even characterization, but to explore the magic system, the technology, and the customs of the world.
Yeah, you did say something about Lightbringers.
I don't fucking care. It focuses on the bioessentialist cultures, the gender roles for men and women, the rules regarding duels, how everyone carries a sword, though women are seen to almost exclusively have pretty concealed weapons inside parasols. And of course, it discusses the magic system. And of course, Lyra, by the way, doesn't have a pretty sword as far as we know. She has like a normal sword, so that detail about parasols, who fucking cares, ultimately speaking. Again, redundant to what we need to have happen in the book. Of course, none of this is organically shown to us in the narrative or presented to us bit by bit. We're bombarded by world building, where it's not immediately relevant. And it never really sinks in because there's no conduit through which the world building can naturally and organically be presented to us. See, Shad uses a light-based magic system that channels the light, which is both a physical light and divine patron energy to create magic. You can manipulate the light to heal, increase the natural abilities, create concussive bursts, control gravity, mass, the elements, whatever.
Dalen bonded all his paths to his sense of sound and focused on cries for help or distress. He picked up 3 instantly. A young girl's screams, in addition to the sound of tearing of cloth, caught Dalen's attention, and his head snapped to its origin.
wait, if he enhanced his ability to hear, why does he only hear a specific sound that's relevant to the plot and not every single sound in the city?
True.
That makes no fucking sense. Jim.
Yeah.
Well, the book tries to explain limitations.
He'd be
to this
bombarded
magic. It
with.
feels vague, and
He'd be like Mao from Code Geass, straight up bombarded by so many voices. How would he even make clarity of all of them? What?
wishy-washy. Dalen at one point just binds magic to itself and blows off his feet, but in seconds he regenerates with that magic. So what does that really mean? I don't fucking know. One thing I thought of while reading this chunk was Mistborn. In Brandon Sanderson's classic series, we are shown Vem learning the rules of allomancy, which is a very specific magic system with very specific rules. And it's very complicated. You digest certain metals, and that results in different types of magic. And it's presented to us organically, bit by bit, usually through dialogue, and then being applied practically in the narrative itself. And what this accomplishes is we get a real sense of the limitations of magic bit by bit by bit. What can you do realistically with the material you have on hand? And because of that, we are anchored to limitation. There is tension there. They can't just pull shit out of their ass. We know what they can do. But light binding in Shadow of the Conqueror has no seeming limitations, at least not concrete ones. And as we go on, we quickly go from just being, oh, you can move fast, to Dragon Ball Z city-destroying fight scenes. There is a sequence later on in this book
Instead of
where
Final
Shad
Fantasy
just
VII
uses magic
using the sun
to make
to
himself
nuke the
better at sword
world.
fighting. He just does that. That's a thing you can do. That's fucking stupid, Shad. A key fight later on only happens because both fighters agree to just not use magic, because it'll be done faster. What the fuck is up with that? Now, despite Shad spending pages and pages and pages of this first chunk detailing how Dalen can use magic, especially in chapter 3 where he has a magic training montage while falling through the sky at terminal velocity, which, by the way, the blood should have drained from his brain at a certain point. He should have been out cold for that whole fall. He shouldn't have been a conscious thinking, oh, if I do this and that, I can do this kind of spell. Like,
how does that even work?
I
mean, I guess it isn't the end of the world, so it's kind of like trying to justify maybe physics don't work, but still, this is so, why have a training montage while you're falling through the sky? Why not just have a regular training montage, like practicing magic? Man, this is really confusing. Straight up confusing.
What does it mean to bind light? We don't really know. What does it mean to channel it? How is using magic normally different from binding light to light? You know, we have these 2 bonds, now they have 4 bonds. Like, what the fuck does it mean, 4 bonds? You know, the problem is he explains it to us in so much detail that the detail starts to sound stupid. It's repetitive, and it's like saying the same word.
It's basically serving nothing, essentially.
15 times in a row. At a certain point, the word stops making sense. We're told later on, Lightbringers can conjure things that are less than their body mass, okay? But we also see Dalen can increase his mass, and maybe potentially increase other masses. So why does it mean someone else can't increase someone else's mass and then just use that to make infinite shit? Maybe a Lightbringer can just make raw plutonium.
Infinite stuff.
Ark says he needs to be familiar with something.
Infinite money glitch.
Better. But if you're making unstable plutonium, it doesn't need to be perfect, just radioactive. Shad writes his magic systems as though it's hard magic, with defined rules, but the real rule is that magic works better for Dalen and worse for everyone else. Because power fantasy, the only rule in this magic system is Dalen can just win every fight. And if he can't win normally, he'll use magic to make sure he wins. There's multiple scenes in the end chapter where it's like, wow, no one's ever done that with magic before. And Dalen's like, I thought of it first. But really, it's like, this is stupid. You're just breaking the rules of your world to make Dalen more powerful. But in the process, it begs the question why no one else has done this sooner. Especially considering Dalen has only known to do magic for a couple weeks. And he's up against people who have been around magic their entire lives. Yeah, it's bullshit. Now, conservatively, 30% of conversations Dalen has are either about the art of sarcasm or his past as a conqueror. Another 50% are about magic systems or the light. And the last 20% might be about what's currently happening around the characters. And it doesn't count Lyra and Cusack, who, despite investigating Dalen, mostly talk about Cusack or sex. Almost all of it's about sex. We also get written fight scenes where We detail not the emotional climaxes of each confrontation, but how Dalen just uses magic to rip someone's penis off.
Dalen marched on the man, increasing his strength and fended off his feeble attempts to stop him.
No,
He
please
grasped the
don't.
rapist's manhood. Dalen paused for a brief second, staring into the rapist's eyes and letting him realize what Dalen was about to do. He went pale, his mouth dropping, and before his pleas for mercy could leave his mouth, Dalen ripped off the man's penis and threw it aside in one swift motion.
And the detail is repetitive.
They actually said it. They actually went for poor, what was it? Guy who lended his voice to read that atrocious text. May his sacrifice will not be in vain. Ooh-wee. That's a line in the book.
Okay, this is simple. Dalen jumps, lands.
A tree is literally dead for what I can describe as simply toilet paper with text. This is what it's literally giving me out so far. Literally toilet paper with text on it. Like, the paper is a bit more for the people who are brave enough, but still, it is paper.
Lands on a roof, crashes through, attacks a bad guy. Okay? Very simple. How long does it take for Shad to write this? I'm gonna give you about 1/3 of how long this description is. At 1.5 speed.
Ducking down an alleyway out of sight, Dalen jumped into
I'll give you 1/3 at 1.5 speed. Man, that has gotta be like straight on to the point of telling you just how atrocious the writing is.
a crouch, where he channeled light through 2 bonds into his strength, the other 2 reducing his mass and making himself lighter. Dalen jumped and easily pushed himself forward and up a good 5 meters, being able to focus all his strength to propel a much smaller mass. But with the volume of his body remaining the same, it acted like a sail, the wind pushing against his chest and sending him into a flailing backward spin, stopping his forward momentum completely. He then drifted like a piece of paper to the ground. Dalen released the bombs and thumped the brick-paved ground with his fist. Dalen reduced his mass and increased his strength once more and jumped. This time, after leaving the ground, he switched all his bonds to increase his mass, thinking to increase his momentum. He stopped abruptly right in the middle of the air like he had hit an invisible wall, his clothing and sword flicking forward due to whiplash, and then he fell half a meter to land crouched on the ground, shattering the bricks beneath him. Increasing his mass wouldn't increase his momentum. He needed to give himself a great burst of speed, but shedding his mass from his normal weight wouldn't be enough. Dalen stood, and the shattered bricks crunched underneath. He was still bonding all the light he could to increase his mass. He estimated that he weighed around 8 tons, yet he could still move as easily as normal. Keeping his mass at its greatest amount, Dalen crouched, held his gauntleted forearm in front of him, looked up into the sky, and jumped. The amount of force needed to throw 8 tons into a normal-sized human jump was huge, and it was that very amount of force that Dalen had just generated due to his body being augmented to maintain his natural level of movement. Then, at the very moment his feet were about to leave the ground, Dalen switched his bonds to his body's strength, shedding the massive amount of added mass. The mass left, but the kinetic energy he had just produced remained, which was the proportional force to launch 8 tons into a 2-meter arch.
We'd get it, right? Like, we know what he's doing. He's using
Mathematics.
his magic to make himself fly or run faster or hit something harder. We don't have to see that intricate detail again and again and again. We do the exact same thing.
I mean, I guess it's trying to show like he's still practicing with magic, but yeah, it's like it would become repetitive if they do it over and over and over again. I guess the sentence with the whole cut everything down to 1 chapter with the whole murdering a mugger and inadvertently, having to learn magic would have been nice, but I guess the power fantasy needs to be kept alive.
Because that would give us so many details that we might actually forget that why he's using magic. But no, that's what Chad does. He repeats the same thing over and over and over and over again to make sure you understand at every single point what's happening, as opposed to trusting his audience to figure out, oh, Dalen's doing the thing he did before again. We don't need to hear it every fucking time, Chad. This results in every fight being a drag to get through, because you're reading the same few fucking chapters as before. It's the same thing over and over and over again. Additionally, many of these discussions about light feel repetitious and overly wordy. Like, here's the thing. The light exists as both a physical and abstract concept, like I said before. Power comes from a patron, like I said before. Darkness weakens light powers. Okay, if you get hidden from the light for too long, you become a monster. You can bind light into an object, your person, or you can use it to summon material. But if you bind it to an item or person, you can enhance its abilities and change its physical properties. Or just blow something up, apparently. Is that so complicated? Was that hard to follow? Did it take me long to explain those basic details? Why the fuck is half the book devoted to explaining basic shit about your magic system? He spends so much time explaining the intricacies of what is essentially a basic fucking magic system, to the point where it sounds ridiculous. It doesn't make you invested, it makes it needlessly confusing and exhausting to read. So you end up skimming past it. I'm sure a lot of readers just saw magic discussion, next page, next page, next page. I listened to an audiobook, so I had to just bear it. I had to raw dog the whole fucking thing. This audiobook was about 20 hours long, a little less than 20 hours long. If you cut down on all the magic shit, it could have been 10 hours long, which is still too long for this fucking plot, but more bearable. From chapters 7 to 19, we're treated to Dalen, now accompanied by Auric, making the slow trek to the capital. And no, by chapter 19, he does not get to the capital. We'll just transition to the storyline. Dalen's reasoning is to get to the capital to fuddle his own paperwork, to basically fake his birth, and thus remove any legal consequence that he could ever face by identifying as the Conqueror. But he can identify as Dalen, and he wants to be respected as a master, but he's not the Conqueror. He wants to have his cake and eat it. The problem is that every scene here is the same, basically. Dalen and Auric argue about the meaning of sarcasm, about morals, and we're just sort of feeling every step of the journey in the worst possible way. It's like being stuck in a car with two chatty people who repeat the same argument they've had for the last 40 years, while you're stuck with a phone at low battery. Add to that, there are multiple scenes where Dalen encounters a person who was mad at his father for one reason or another. There's a scene early on in this arc where Dalen encounters someone from the town he was hidden away at. This man is unarmed, he has no weapon, and he just decides to punch Dalen. Dalen just unleashes the full force of his magic power, breaking the bully's arm and every single bone in his body in seconds.
Why though? Unarmed child.
Once Dalen reaches a major city, he goes around playing superhero, again, complete with intricate detail being put into how he uses his magic to fly in the air, swoop through ceilings, and stop rapists and torturers. But none is spent humanizing the victims of violence, nor ever presenting criminals that he stops as anything more than dolls for Dalen to exact his brutal vengeance against. There's a particular scene that I've alluded to already in this video, where Dalen finds a father assaulting his daughter. And, well, you heard the scene already.
He grasped the raped manhood.
While Dalen has attacked a monster, he also leaves his family potentially with no source of income. In Shad's world, men are the breadwinners because that's how it is. Dalen could use his immense wealth to bring the family out of poverty that he's inflicted upon them, but he chooses not to. Once he's done with his family, he just jumps and leaves. The victim is left in horror over what just happened, facing an uncertain future with no definitive path forward. And that could be potentially worse than whatever happened to her before. Towards the end of these chunk of chapters, we also discover the Dawnists, a group of people who actually kind of miss while Dalen was in charge. And Dalen is repulsed by these people, despite in the second chapter of the novel arguing that the world was better under his rule because there was no slaves, the infrastructure was better, and the monoculture was the same. But I mean, listen, he can rant about how many improvements made infrastructure all he wants, but he totally hates being a ruler. It was bad when he was in charge. That being said, though, with the introduction of the Dawnists, we now have a stronger sense of the politics Dalen
so that's what these guys are.
Of his politics, which, you know, invites more criticism of Shad's world building. Now, early on, I thought Dalen was kind of being set up like a Napoleon figure, you know, a conqueror of people who is romanticized by some and demonized by others. But no, actually, he's a different leader. Dalen, according to the Dawnists, is communist. Yeah, no, it's not even really communism, it's more like Stalinism, where there is one figurehead who kind of usurps the methods of communism to situate themselves as more powerful. Essentially, our main character is an ex-communist. He was a dictator who purged the world of his enemies and stole everyone's property for his own. It's a conservative dream of communism. While Dalen claims he built the infrastructure and had no slaves, he built his empire out of forced labor. And again, knowing what we know about Shad, this makes sense. He would position the ultimate evil as a communist. But the Dawnists aren't communist. There's
Huh?
the good stuff, regulating businesses, remove power from the Archknights who derive their power through divine right to rule, push back against the aristocracy, push back against the rich who control everything. Basically just a revolution that allows the poor to be less disenfranchised.
Yeah,
We know slavery
that's
is
good.
institution since Dalen left. We know the poor are deeply, deeply poor. We see tenements and the impoverished laying in the streets. We see so many beggars and muggers around, desperate for money. We know about people who are completely desperate throughout the whole story. And the Daunists think we should improve society somewhat, at least at this stage of the story.
Indeed, Hamara would have been destroyed by our own aristocracy, but it was the conqueror who liberated us. And then after that, the other nations flew in like drakes to take our lands. Who was it that fought them off? We all know who. The same man who saved us from starvation and ensured we were always fed. These days, we regular people starve, and the Senate not only does nothing, they are complicit. Why? Because their pockets get lined with gold crowns by those who force us to work in their factories like slaves. The Daunist pointed to the well-dressed people in the crowd booing at him. Of course they don't want the Empire back, because people like them couldn't exist in it. In the Empire, everything was owned by all, not the greedy few that steal money from our own pockets. Not that it's much. Barely 7 measly rue pennies an hour while they hoard all the wealth that we make for them, he roared to the crowd. Then there's the guilds, who don't allow the common man to learn their trades and charge a fair and honest price for skilled labor. The Emperor fought the guilds to regulate them properly, and what did they do? They rose up against him. Under the rule of Dalus the Conqueror, each man got his fair share, and no man could make
I do
himself better
ominous
than another.
music.
Both Dalen and Lyra hate the Daunists on concept.
Lyra, your face is different, and even me who is bad with faces, it is big enough to know. You are angry. It's the Daunists. Yes, they need to be killed.
That escalated quickly.
Yeah,
Thinks their politics
that
are just
escalated
incorrect,
quickly.
and Lyra thinks that the Daunists
straight up speaking facts, and it's like, I just want some fair money and everything. I'm tired, Papa. Well, that's too damn bad. What? Straight up cues him all. Man, this really does feel like a circus. Thank goodness I'm not the clown. I'm enjoying this though.
will just make people lazy, all while true authority should be held by the Archknights and the aristocracy. The Archknights exist as a worldwide system of justice who enforce it in every country without any oversight. They decide who is a criminal and who isn't and what the proper execution should be, specifically public execution. And they're given their powers by God. They have a divine right to protect, except no. I just lied to you. Because part of Lyra's motivation in trying to capture Dalen is because Dalen proves the Archknights aren't special. They don't need to follow an oath to get their power. It's some arcane ritual that Dalen stumbled upon. We learn shortly after Lyra confronts a group of Daunists that Cuseg was branded for being an adulterer, which is customary in his people, and out of anger, he went to the woman who he had an adulterous relationship with, who was not marked, again, based on standards of the culture, and branded her face. That means Cuseg violently broke his oath and didn't lose his powers, and maimed a woman. And this is kind of like brushed off. It's never really mentioned all that much after the initial scene it's discussed. This is the comic relief character, by the way, maiming women who upset him. So the current authority derives their powers based on lies, hunts anyone down who might threaten their rule, and can just violently execute people in the streets without consequence.
Hans.
Oh, where's the bad guys?
What makes them in theory any different than the Daunists who want to instill
accurate
legal regulation to keep businesses from abusing customers and aristocrats from manhandling people and making the poor all the more poorer and more desperate? For the longest time, I'm kind of on their side because the society clearly sucks. Starting in chapter 19 onward, we enter a not so brief arc where Dalen and Auric, still traveling to the capital, they haven't gotten there yet, halfway through the book, run into a band of pirates.
Halfway through
led by
already?
the
We haven't
cartoonishly
reached the
named
capital?
Blackheart. Yes, seriously, Blackheart. And no, Shad, pointing out how stupid of a name it is does not make the name... Yes, seriously, Blackheart. And no, Shad, pointing out how stupid of a name it is... Blackheart. Yes, seriously.
It looks like that guy from Street Fighter. What was his name? No, that's the guy from Mortal Kombat. Damn it. I forgot him. It's the guy with the electricity and the green skin. It literally looks like him, but just more malnourished and his shadow more so than the character. Ah, man. I cannot remember him for the life of me. But yeah, talk about, is that how they're all supposed to look like? That's kind of bland. I mean, still cool, just very bland. Not gonna lie, very bland. Not so much to offer in terms of that. But then again, it is supposed to. Where are the demons, man? Could have been easily demons or something like that. Could have been much more interesting. Whatever.
Blackheart. And no, Shad, pointing out how stupid of a name it is does not make the name any less stupid. They are on an airship run by merchants, more on them in a bit, and they're attacked by pirates. So Dalen and Auric kill all of them, except for a boy named Sane, who is a young boy who apparently has more light in his heart than the rest of the pirates. We'll get to that later. Ultimately, the worst fate befalls Blackheart, who Dalen takes and sticks him on a spike.
Oh.
Right up his ass.
And shove it up your ass.
The straight up, like, Dracula treatment.
And this is supposed to be badass. It's really stupid, actually. When you say that out loud, you realize how dumb that sounds. Now, I do want to give Shad credit where it's due. This sequence does have potential. It's just two men against an airship of pirates.
Sounds fun.
Strategy, cunning. You know, how do you maneuver an airship in space? And, oh, no, they just let the pirates board the ship and they kill them with this.
So no chase scene, no maneuverability. It's an airship in space. Man, you know, crazy thing is, Empire Strikes Back did this infinitely better. Treasure Planets had a much more logical conclusion to it by having the pirates masquerade as the crew. Oh boy, that's gotta be the most boring way to take care of an issue. Someone's pursuing us, let them board us, and then we dealt with them. Just like that. That sounds so boring.
Swords is really good at slashing and using magic powers against pirates without magic powers and with minimal sword skills, and they just kind of wipe the floor with them. Let's ignore the fact that Shad deliberately created a scenario where none of the pirates could ever challenge his two protagonists. Let's also ignore the fact that Shad consistently pits Dalen against enemies who have no knowledge of magic until like the last fourth of the book. This fight is conducted while on airships. There are many ways they could have done something really interesting. Maybe utilized aerial combat, used something clever, but no, it's just, you know, sword fights. The closer we get to something interesting is the discovery that Blackheart is one of Dalen's bastard children, which instills that Dalen has bastard children other than the fake son he's pretending to be. But here's the question too. If Dalen has so many bastards, and we find out there's dozens of them, what makes Dalen so special? Like, this section ultimately undermines a prior chunk of the book. In prior chapters, Dalen has become a subject of fascination for city folks, where people wanted to talk to him or fight him. But we know later on there are dozens and dozens of bastards, and they all look like Dalen. So what makes Dalen
Wait, how do they
special?
look exactly?
In fact,
not only are they like clones of him? What do you mean they all look identical to one another? That don't make no sense. That's not how biology works. What?
Should nothing make him special. Quite honestly, no one should be talking about him. He's one of dozens. And Dalen doesn't seem to know about any of these dozens of bastards he has walking around, even though some are senators, some are archknights, some are pirate captains. How has he never heard of his bastard children?
That's
it makes
true.
no sense. It also begs the question.
I mean, I guess he did fake his death and like went into hiding, but still, no stories going around how they came to visit or something. That is so weird.
That if Dalen had so many bastards, why is it so important for Dalen to get a birth certificate forged? Chances are some might be hidden, you know? Like, this whole subplot about going to the capital to get a birth certificate makes no sense, but as we find out later...
It doesn't even make sense from the beginning. How the hell is a medieval sci-fi franchise going to go out of its way to have the main plot point a birth certificate? A birth certificate of all things. That's like having Han receiving his last name through an Imperial in his Solo movie. Seriously, that's essentially what this is. It's like if the Solo movie was about Han trying to figure out how to name himself in across the entirety of the movie, and by the end of it, he arrives at the Empire and just Han Solo. It's just this is basically the plot I'm getting from this. Occasional sword fighting, fist fighting, magic that is just literally making the character super overpowered, and that's it. The main plot point is to get to the capital for a birth certificate. So stupid.
Actually crucial to how the story turns out. Pirate captains, less crucial than documentation.
That is crazy.
But anyway, thankfully, this pirate arc is short. I mean, chapter 19, they bump into the pirates the first time. Chapter 21, they kill the last pirate. Nice, easy little arc, right? You know, a couple chapters, concise, is what I'm talking about. Wait, no, it's still going. Why is this arc still going? Oh god, there's 10 more chapters of this. Because this arc, despite Dalen killing the big bad a couple chapters into it, drags on for a fifth of the book. Yeah, it keeps going after they've killed the pirates. Because it turns out the merchant ship they were defending happens to be trafficking underage girls for slavery, for the world's oldest profession, if you know what I'm saying. And so Dalen just
how do we jump to that?
The ship too. Again,
why did my head hurts. This is nah. Honestly, I can write something better while on the toilet.
The one exception is the one boy sane from the pirate ship because Dalen could see the light inside his heart. Which, also, let's take a step back here. Dalen and Auric determine who deserves death based on sensing their inner light. And if their light doesn't cross a certain threshold, they kill them. Except, no, that's not true because later on there's a character named Jenna whose light is also pretty significant, and Dalen just kills her too. So really, it's a pretense that barely makes any sense. The idea of the light is that it's supposed to represent the possibility of them doing good, but really it reads more like these characters are NPCs, they have a low light level, these characters have a high light level, therefore they are PCs and we can actually have them talk and have a personality. It's only a way to show who's a background character and who isn't. So you're probably thinking, okay, so what you described, that's the whole arc, right? We're done now. Except no, that's the first 3 chapters of the arc. Of a 12-chapter arc of hunting pirates. And only one other chapter in this 12-chapter arc involves fighting pirates. The rest is spent navigating the skies, with Dalen tying the pirate ship to the merchant ship. He claims both of them for himself. Dalen beating up Sane and being almost intimate with one of the underage girls he saved from trafficking.
No, good.
Our hero. And this whole scene, you know, Shad wrote it.
Yeah, our hero.
So, like, you didn't have to
unironically
write the rescued children from trafficking want to throw themselves on you. You didn't have to write that. That was your choice. What the fuck is wrong with you, dude? They end up fighting the pirates in their hidden pirate base, and they kill all the pirates, and they find the pirates kept hostages that were in the dark. And in Chad's world, if a person is completely closed off from the light, they turn into a heartless. I mean, a shade. That's totally different than a heartless. And the shade, who is managed by an elder shade, who kind of can speak through this shade, recognizes Dalen from the Fourth Night, that event that happened in the past, and recognizes Dalen as Dalen the Conqueror. And he declares this man is Dalen the Conqueror next to Auric. And Auric must be a fucking moron. I need to say it right now. Auric's a complete fucking idiot. In this entire book, he's been near Dalen and repeatedly notes how similar Dalen looks to Dalus the Conqueror and all that. He knows he's the Conqueror's blood, knows he's a Grand Master, knows he has unexplainable power, and that Dalen will sometimes just accidentally conflate what happened to his father, quote unquote, with him. And so, right down to knowing women he assaulted decades prior on a first name basis. And this happens multiple times in the book. There's a scene where he insists that there's no way his father could have ever had a child. And Arc's like, well, how do you know that? And he never gives a good answer. That should have been proof right there to a guy who's experienced with magic. In this magical universe, those sonicles, the +1 magic swords, they're tied to the light of an individual person. And when that person it's bonded to dies, the sword shatters. Dalen's magic sword didn't shatter, which means Dalen isn't dead. And Dalen insists that the sword is bound to him because he's the firstborn kid, but that's not true. And no one thinks Dalen did some magic bullshit to make himself younger. Well, actually, that's not true. In reality, past the firstborn kid, Dalen just says he is the kid of Dalen the Conqueror. I think there's no other kids. And so, but right there, that's inconsistency, right? That's odd. If you're a wise man who studies magic all of his life, that should be ringing some alarm bells. And yet Aric's like, oh, that's odd. Okay, moving on with my life. And mind you, it is implied that Aric suspects something might be up. But at a certain point, man, how do you not notice the alarm bells going off all around you every second of the day?
Apparently
But finally,
he's written
after
like an
32
incompetent
chapters,
character.
we reach the capital. It took long enough. And he comes in with Aric, Sane, 2 airships, and a boatload of rescued women. And he flies into the capital. He gives Sane the majority of his gold, which, I mean, I guess that counts as nice, but he also abused Sane all that time, so it's kind of, you know, how's that going to work out exactly? Dalen could have used that money to create infrastructure that benefits the whole of society rather than just one kid. But, you know, what are you going to do? When you get to the city,
yeah, what are you
going
to
to
do?
decide, we're going to just fight
We're
the
near the
darkness
end.
because we know they got airships from the pirates. I want to remind you, it's not illegal to get an airship in this story. Dalen now has 2 airships, for example. The Daunists are not presented as evil yet. They could be practical uses for an airship. They just acquired one illegally. Is that worth mass execution? No. At this point in time, there's no reason to suspect the Daunists did anything wrong. They did do something wrong, but we don't know that yet. But wait, I hear you say.
Okay.
What about the birth certificate? Wasn't the only reason we came to the city
this
to
thing.
change the birth certificate? Well, don't worry. Shad didn't forget. He just doesn't prioritize it. Dalen's original plan was to slip into the capital and change his birth certificates. But there's a problem. He saved so many people along the way, he's now heralded as a hero. It completely undermined the entire plot, because now he walks in the city and the whole city just knows who he is, and alert the Archknights. He now has drawn so many eyes to him, he can no longer do the thing he set off to do in the first place, and it's entirely his own fault.
He attracted so much attention that somebody must have already dug into his past far enough to find that there were no records of him. Forging new ones that magically appeared after it had been discovered that they didn't exist would just create more suspicion. Why, damn it all, Dalen said. He had arrived at the capital too late. He had failed. Now he would just have to see how things turned out.
That makes the entire trip completely pointless. In fact, by bringing Aric to the capital, where they are the birth certificates, Dalen also opens up a whole other bag of worms that we'll get to in a second. I also want to point out, too, that one of the people that Dalen wants to target are also the sex traffickers, you know, the people who are going to buy those girls he just rescued. He forgets about them. He just forgets about the sex trafficking. He just, not important to him. The Daunists,
apparently not.
Political refugees.
Listen, we're talking about a guy who tried to get his birth certificate changed, and all the while he was becoming a hero trying to forge his, or rather to, make a name for himself inadvertently. His heroic deeds quite literally bit him back in the butt, and this subsequently resulted in him not having to succeed in his birth certificate thing, which again is stupid. Like, this story feels so tiresome. I'm ready to keel over and sleep. Hopefully, I'll forget about it. Hopefully, because this is nuts.
Who want to make things slightly better, they take it as full priority. The actual group trafficking young women, secondary to him. It's not as important. I guess it reflects Shad's priorities in the story, but I digress.
Priorities in the story. What are these priorities in the story? Hero tries to be more so tyrant tries to redeem himself by forging a fake identity. Yeah, sure, very interesting story. Man, this is wow. You can clearly take notes of the fact that Shad does not have any like Bible for all the characters in the story. It's just straight up write something and pray to the Lord. It will be we'll get a passing grade.
Capital arc I like. There are these things called the floating isles, which kind of feel like castle in the sky, like floating castles. They're kind of cool. I like that. There's a very Miyazaki-esque feel to them, which is, fitting because Shad thinks he's more talented than Miyazaki because he used AI to make sexy Saki. That's a thing he did. He's very proud of this, apparently. Anyway, Dalen is arrested immediately upon entering the city by Lyra for his murderous acts of violence and for impersonating an Archknight. The Archknight thing is the bigger crime, apparently. Dalen immediately recognizes Lyra, and Lyra immediately breaks his ribs, while Cusack apprehends him by essentially using a Darkstone marble to weaken Dalen. It's incredibly satisfying after 30-something chapters to watch someone take Dalen down. Because he's been invincible. Every fight he wins in seconds. But right now, he gets his ass kicked by someone who actually knows how to fight back. This will not last. Also, he said the Archknights demonstrate themselves to be violent cops who beat up their targets to arrest them. In a few chapters from now, it'll be framed as bad when someone attacks Archknights. But when Dalen and Auric fight Archknights, it's fine. This fight, by the way, is the best in the book because Dalen understands the least about what's going on. As a result, we aren't bogged down by all this detail and unnecessary bullshit. But also, unfortunately, at this point, the fights transition from normal fantasy sword fights to basically Dragon Ball Z fights where buildings are knocked down, where the full force of magic is unleashed, and these characters can regenerate from almost any injury, so it's far less interesting. It's better when Dalen is confronting something he doesn't recognize and can't explain through the physics of the story thus far. It cuts out the bullshit and allows the action to resonate more beat to beat to beat. Now, Auric lets himself get arrested by the Archknights while Dalen runs off. Our hero, letting his good friends take accountability for all the crimes he committed. Auric also suggests that creating a force of evolution that could upheave the order of the Archknights is a good thing, because the Archknights don't derive their power from anything. Auric, we find out, is a revolutionary, which again, Daunists are also revolutionaries, but Daunists are bad guys, Auric's a good guy, even though they do the exact same thing.
Yeah, pretty much. They're one and the same, actually.
Is it bad to revolutionize and upheave the government and power of controls, or is it good? So we get mixed messages here. So after thinking about it, I think I have it cracked. So Auric becomes a revolutionary because his family is killed by Dalen back in the day. The Daunists become revolutionaries because society is terrible. So I guess Shad's saying revenge is okay, but trying to improve society somewhat is evil. I think that's what I'm getting from this because Auric is the good guy and his revolutionary actions are seen as unambiguously good, but the Daunists are treated like monsters before they do anything directly evil. So I guess revenge, good, helping the poor with systemic change, bad. And
aside from the ominous music, at this point, might as well just make them terrorists. Unironically, that would just fix the majority of it all. Just make them terrorists. I'm dying. I'm literally dying. Do not send help. Let me rest in peace.
By the way, before you say it, yes, Auric does in fact kill more people in his revolution than the Daunists ever do or ever could do in this book. I want to point out there, Auric has a higher body count than the entirety of the Daunists. So here's things that's stupid. Dalen realizes he missed something with
just
how he was fighting Lyra. Lyra summons a weapon, and he's like, how did she do that? So he basically binds magic to his brain, which essentially gives himself the penance stare from Ghost Rider. He relives all the memories of his life all at once, and it short-circuits his brain and actually kills him for a little bit.
His back arched and his whole body tensed, his face growing red from the mental anguish. He screamed and screamed. It was an assault on the mind and the senses too torturous to bear. Dalen could feel himself swinging the sword that took off the 9-year-old princess's head, and even worse, he could remember how he had felt about it, how he had felt that it was actually the right thing to do. He remembered his feelings and hatred for the people of Daybreak when he ordered the city's destruction. He remembered watching on with satisfaction as he murdered millions. Some vile, dark part of himself back then had actually enjoyed performing those heinous acts. His body tensed and writhed even more, reflecting the torment of his mind to the point that blood began to seep through the pores of his skin. And then, in that instant, Dalen's mind snapped, unable to cope, and Dalen Namaran died.
And he breaks his brain and dies. And you're probably wondering, well, what's the benefit of this? Because he gets better. He dies, and seconds later,
I thought you died. Sadly, yes, but but I lived. Oh my god, this is
it comes back to life. This is the point where there's no more tension because you can just die now and you'll be fine.
yeah, and you'll just come
boost
back.
yourself right back.
At this point, the guy is literally immortal. You can't convince me otherwise. The guy just regenerates wounds and can just come back from the dead. Like, he's immortal. Flat out. That's what happened. He returned to a youthful magical body that is literally immortal.
And it's not the only time he dies in this book and gets better seconds later. There's another
good.
occasion too. But what does he get out of this? He figures out how Lyra summons a sword.
Wow.
That's it.
I kicked the bucket only to learn how to summon a sword. What a useless power up.
He kills himself to figure out how Lyra summons a weapon.
Yeah.
It doesn't give any real benefit, it just looks cool. And we spend a chapter on this. Yeah, your friend's arrested, and rather than help him out, you just want to figure out how to do magic better. Also, aren't you on the run from the Archknights? And he's screaming in pain, he's screaming in horror, and like, you're gonna draw attention to yourself. Aren't you supposed to hunt sex traffickers?
No. He's in the dark, so therefore he's safe. Or something else like that. It's gotta be explained in the book.
Aren't you trying to hunt,
Why am I asking for an explanation from a book that's clearly a circus? Never mind.
Daunists? So, like, what's the point of this? And also, you're a celebrity in public screaming your head off. Like, I know he's like in a little penthouse that he rented, but like, still, you're basically asking someone to figure out where you are, and indeed, they figure out where he is.
Oh,
but
okay,
thanks
good.
to Auric actually doing shit, there's now an agreement. The Archknights will stop hunting Dalen under the condition he doesn't reveal how he got his powers, which Dalen was going to do anyway because that would give away the source of his power to anyone else and they could use it against him. Dalen will eventually join the Archknights. However, Dalen will still have to go confront the authorities of the city to get addressed for his crimes. And he does, and they just kind of, give him a warning and set him on his way. There's no more conflict now. The momentum of the story has halted, and so he should go off and fix his birth certificate now. Oh no, he's going to hunt the Daunists with Lyra.
To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's only a movie. Only a movie. Only a movie. Take as much as you can.
Wait, what? Explicit discussion of ahead. Skip to next chapter of sensitive. Oh boy, we're delving into the massive amounts of darkness here. This is not good, but I'm a brave boy. Or rather, I'm stable enough to handle it. So, fair warning, you have been warned by both him and me. Let's go into it. Man, even YouTube wants to censor this. Straight up wants to censor this.
Here's
Jeez, why is it so laggy now? Come on, go back.
Story has halted and front Yuka's powers, which Dalen was going to do anyway because that would give away the source of his power to anyone else and they could use it against him. Dalen will eventually join the Archknights. However, Dalen will still have to go confront the authorities of the city to get addressed for his crimes. And he does, and they just kind of, give him a warning and set him on his way. There's no more conflict now. The momentum of the story has halted, and so he should go off and fix his birth certificate now. Oh no, he's going to hunt the Daunists with Lyra.
To avoid fainting, keep repeating. It's
All right.
only a movie.
Here we go.
Only a movie. Take as much as you can. Only a movie.
Here's an uncomfortable reality about Shadow the Conqueror. Every single female character in this story, especially underage characters, exist as sex objects. All of them
Why?
are defined by sex. Either they're flirting with a guy, rejecting a man's passes, or being assaulted. All the women are either sex slaves or have emotional problems with sex. The only exception is that farmer's wife back in chapter 4, who is a mother and described repeatedly by Shad as very fat. So I guess he's not attracted to her. But it turns out that Lyra knows Dalen because she was one of his many, many, many underage sex slaves.
Oh,
Dalen
goody.
assaulted Lyra multiple times as a young girl, which is why she's sex repulsed, because Dalen raped her repeatedly. Lyra, after this point, is infantilized by the story, because she's shown crying, being emotional, broken, traumatized, needing to lighten up. We later learn that Lyra was also impregnated by Dalen, but in the process carved out her organs to not bear a child. Why Lyra can't regenerate her organs, if everyone else can regenerate their bodies from like a single cell, is anybody's guess. But
Yeah,
there you
true.
go.
Like,
The book
straight up
treats this
there,
as
like,
an abomination.
perfect cell. How can you not... Huh? What? That is so bizarre. Yeah, like I said, they can apparently regenerate and restore their bodies, but it's like selective choice? I don't know. Magic system here is more confusing than I thought it would be. God damn.
As Lyra ruining her chances at happiness by aborting a baby, which is fucked up, actually.
Very.
Let's ignore the fact for a second here that
Very
it's a
grim
little
topic
absurdly
to discuss.
sexist to have all the women exist as sex slaves. At no point in this book is sexual assault ever given the weight it deserves as a topic. Rape is treated as a thing that happens to women.
Which is...
Quite frankly, fuck you, Shad.
Yeah.
Fuck you. At no point is the trauma from assault ever explored. Yeah, sure. Lyra is upset.
That's so crazy. They're not even treated like NPCs. They're more treated like, by that logic, just dolls. Like, no personality, no whatsoever. Just pretty figure to go on at it. Ugh. That is really borked. Not to mention the whole ordeal with him explaining that it's underage kids. And the fact that he's going out of his way to describe it as... This is... I mean, what do you expect from a guy that loses his collective shab over a character from a game that has an iconic racing outfit? And he judges her for the fact that she's using said outfit in a movie. Unreal, man. Straight up unreal.
And cries because she hates sex, but it's not explored. Hell, for 80% of the book, it's a joke. It's a punchline for most of it. And Lyra is the exception that proves the rule because she's the only character who actually voices her fears after being assaulted. None of the sex slaves have their trauma explored. There's one girl who's assaulted by the merchants, and she tries to thank Dalen for saving her by throwing herself at him. This girl is 16, Dalen is over 80. Yeah, there are scenes where men discuss assault as a bad crime and complain about how society treats survivors of assault as damaged goods. But it's brought up as a brief note.
The Eurasian way would help her greatly, for she needs to master herself. I tried this when we first met. Oh dear, you weren't naked, were you? Of course I was. She, more than anyone I've met, needs to confront the weaknesses of her flesh and learn to master them.
By the way, the person they're talking about right now is Lyra. You know, the survivor of childhood assault. That Lyra? Yeah, she needs to master her body, apparently. Good diagnosis there, Shad.
Amarans view the body very differently. So I've learned, as backward as it is, by hiding their nakedness, they make it taboo to one another, making their bodies like hidden prizes that must be earned. And because they rarely ever see a naked body, when they do, their own bodies take control. Do you know how much is in this land? Because the body is held as a prize, those who cannot earn it choose to take it by force. It's horrendous.
Listen, I'm not gonna go into the topic, but TLDR, it's called human decency. There's a reason for why streaking is not a good thing to do. Unless you're in a beach, I guess, because people do streak in those for some reason. But even then, it's called being decent and, like, having comfort. Like, if someone's revealing too much skin or something like that, they a hoe. They a straight up hoe. That's actually an interesting point. Aren't there medieval hoes in this series? Like, not to be rude, but, like, isn't that still something that they would still have in this? Like, straight up hoes in medieval hookers? Like, that should be a thing, right? You'd think that'd be a thing, right? Some hooters here and there. But no, it's just girls and the occasional forced advantages on them. Advances on them, not advantages. Oh man, it started off as a book, it then turned into a circus tent, and now it's a hollow building trying to make some sense of its existence.
I wonder if the lower rate of sexual assault in Curays is more due to the penalty rather than cultural differences of modesty. The penalty is as bad here. Many men would rather die than publicly lose their manhood, Arik pointed out. And there are other regretful cultural practices here in Hamara that might inflate the difference, such as social shame. Women who've been sexually assaulted here can, unfortunately, be seen as damaged goods. Because of this, there are many cases where women choose not to report the crime. What? Cusack said in disbelief. I know. It's horrible. It's unforgivable. Every land has unfortunate elements within their culture, Arik said, pointing to his forehead and giving Cusack a knowing look. Cusack sniffed. What was your profession? Arik asked at length. I was a chef. Ah,
a chef?
That explains it. Cusack nodded. My standards are very high. I haven't had the opportunity to cook in so long, but that was my choice. I am an arch knight now. Not that anyone would ever accept food from a low sum.
It's just sandwiched right in there between food and sex discussions. But oh, and there's one scene too that centers women's feelings about being assaulted much later. We'll get there. Don't worry. It's one of the more controversial elements of the book.
This is becoming just uncomfortably.
It's just repeatedly happening
boring.
Again and again. And a lot of dark fantasy has a lot of assault scenes. Don't get me wrong. Like Game of Thrones has a lot of those scenes. Sword of Truth is criticized for that as well. And is it disturbing in Shadow the Conqueror? No. It's not disturbing. It's just frustrating. We only hear about
that is true
based on how it happens and how it makes.
Like, if you're gonna discuss the topic, make it as disturbing as possible, because it is a heavy topic. You're supposed to cover it seriously. And maybe, who knows, people might find comfort in the occasional strength in that character who decides to confront said fears and something like that. Damage in any way, shape, or form, physical, mental, whatever, is a challenge and a hurdle to overcome. You never really know what it's like until you experience it yourself. And to have this basically be like a third grader's view of it, not even a third grader. I'm pretty sure the third grader would just use swear words to compensate for this. This is so nothingness. It really is just frustration built on top of itself with nothing to offer.
Men like Dalen feel. It's something humiliating that happens to women. And the only time it's discussed as something that can happen to men is when Dalen takes Blackheart and rams him down on a spike. It's a weapon to be used against people who deserve it. You know, the more I say it, the more angry I get from this discussion. Dalen needs to completely dominate and humiliate his opponents and those lesser than him. And I think that's proof he never comes close to redemption, because sexual assault isn't about having sex or attraction. It's about dominating and humiliating another person. And throughout the book...
even more so, it's just using them as like a tool or an object. I guess dominating a thing as well, but like, it is straight up degrading the human being. Because they don't see themselves as human anymore. They're just an expendable tool in that sense.
We see Shad justify Dalen's humiliation against others by presenting it as a thing that happens to only the bad people. We don't explore the trauma, the micro interactions that can trigger pain. And it's
The
never
bigger
taken
picture,
seriously. It's
the more
either
interesting parts.
melodrama or it's brushed under the rug.
So
There's
boring.
so many atrocities that can happen in a story. There's many things that can happen bad in a fantasy story, or in a pre-industrial world like how Shadow the Conqueror's world kind of is. You know, read The Jungle, for example. There's many ways that people can be maimed in industry and what have you, but Shad only uses assault as the only bad thing that happens around him. There's poverty, and there's assault, and there's murder, and there's nothing else, apparently. He creates multiple scenarios where we are confronted with sexual assault happening. It isn't an account of history. This isn't real life. This is a fictional world where the only bad thing that happens in a text is either cartoonish plans to blow stuff up, or attack people, or assault. Thievery too, but a thief is treated just the same as a in this story. They're both criminals, must be stopped.
That's
and
bizarre.
It's like, you understand the
One guy completely uses and abuses and subsequently tortures a living being. The other one possibly pickpocketed that one guy for like a few golden shekels. And apparently both are treated like high-end execution level threats. Such a bizarre contrast too. Like, what happens if like a noble does this? It's like, are they gonna be executed as well? Yes, no, maybe. Or are they just gonna make an exception? Like, he stole something from another guy. Sure, but if like he put his hands on someone, it's like maybe a light slap on the wrist. They don't even tackle that, judging by like my boy here's description. It's like straight up. Yeah, it really just becomes frustrating, but. Man, my mind is mentally checking out from this. This just becomes not even like it's funny, so bad it's funny, or so bad it's hilariously engaging. It's just boring. I am checking out of it. Straight up. I just want it to end. The worst part is, it feels like it's never ending. The ride never ends. Oh boy.
difference between someone robbing someone.
Such garbage.
And, you know, a crime. And assault. Do you understand the difference there? It's used as this flaccid tool to upset us, but Shad has no comprehension of why it's so upsetting. And because Shad doesn't understand why it's so upsetting, all the assault scenes feel tedious. It's not disturbing, it's exhausting. And these are only used as tools to make Dalen look better. Dalen stops, therefore he's great, but we also find out later on, he's committed hundreds of rapes himself. But he just feels bad.
Yeah, that's not how it
To make
works.
himself feel better, he stops other rapes. That's so kind of you fucking jackass. While Dalen sits down to talk to Lyra, he just sits there feeling bad about assaulting Lyra.
He was simply unable to bear the guilt and pain. He was such a coward. But she wasn't going anywhere. What was Dalen going to do? Truly, the light hated him. It wasn't enough to lengthen his torturous life. Now Dalen had to face what was likely the most terrible and significant reminder of his crimes, one of his past victims. And not just any victim, but one of the most innocent and vulnerable souls that he had ever violated. Dalen moved a shaking hand to the front of his face. Though young and strong, they were still the hands that had committed the crimes. How could he have done such acts? How could any man do such evil? Yet he had. And now he was being punished for those crimes, and he deserved every bit of misery and torment that tortured him, including this new one, a constant reminder of his past sins. It was true that Dalen wasn't able to bear the full force of his guilt and self-hatred. He had been crushed by just a fraction of it that low fall. But even so, there eventually came a point where Dalen found that he could move again. He could bear it and keep on going, as the only other option was to lay down and die. Perhaps this was thanks to his infinite stubbornness and pride. He just couldn't allow himself to give up, regardless of how much he wanted to. Or perhaps it was a curse from the light, for it simply wouldn't let him die before his punishment was over, even if that meant giving him the strength to stand when he honestly felt that he was unable.
He feels guilty about hurting her. Lyra is sex repulsed and upset, and all Dalen can think about is how Lyra was damaged by what he did and how terrible he is. And that's all that matters, how Dalen feels. When Lyra doesn't immediately forgive Dalen's father, which is Dalen himself, and doesn't treat him with extreme respect for doing less than the bare minimum after assaulting her, he gets filled with a murderous rage and calls her a bitch.
Dalen smiled. The world's full of mysteries. Mysteries like why a pubescent troublemaker is trying to make small talk with someone who clearly doesn't like him. Lyra was glaring at him, and Dalen was stunned by the massive mood swing. Hurry up and eat, kid, Lyra said, leaving the table abruptly. I'll be taking you to the constabulary within the hour, she added, before walking to the sitting room and finding a couch with its back to Dalen. Dalen's surprise was quickly melted away by anger. Keeping control of his tongue was all he could do as his shaking fists clenched his cutlery, pressing them into the mahogany dining table. He remained in that state for a good minute, breathing deeply and letting his rage come under control. Dalen eventually dropped his knife and fork, leaning back in frustration and saying under his breath, "Bitch."
The rest of chapter 37, which is by far one of the longest chapters in the book.
Yeah, sure.
Telling Dalen how good he is, how good a guy he is after Lyra doesn't...
The craziest thing is this could have worked, like, if rather than falling in a rage, he straight up, like, started crying. Like, he genuinely is reminded of this, and rather than just simply treating it as, like, some kind of obscure thing, he genuinely feels guilt, regret, something like if you're gonna have them be redeemable, at least go out of your way to put them through like torturous endeavors or even acknowledge their bad actions and even reasons for them. Like, if I remember correctly, in Kratos' case, like, I remember there was a line where he talked about the fisherman from God of War 1. You know, the one that got eaten by the Hydra and then subsequently was in Hades? Was it Hades? I think it was Hades. And the guy was quite literally just being treated by Kratos as, like, nothing more than an expendable soul that he just can execute on a whim. And it's like, it's never brought up again. And yet, later on, in like what's it, Ragnarok maybe, or the sequel, like Kratos actually has a line that talks about him, like, for real, and acknowledges he didn't need to do that to the guy. He just could have taken the key and done nothing else. Like, it shows that rage that he had in the past, while not unforgivable and justified, it really didn't need to be directed at everyone else. It's kind of like how near the end in 3, he just like gives everyone the hope as opposed to like giving it back to Athena. He's still at the very least trying his best to atone for something. He acknowledges he did the bad, but rather than being, straight up, I'm trying to be a good guy doing good things, he's trying to be isolated and doing at the very least his best not to become the war machine he was in the past. And that also translates to his activities and no, not activities, just his straight up guidance and possible interactions in the Norse games, because there he's a bit more calm and collective and still trying his best. He's not perfect, but he's learned, and that's the important thing. If you're gonna have a character be trying to redeem themselves, they need to learn and genuinely try their best. This just feels like this literally does feel like a guy who had like the time of his life, and then after reverting back, rather than just feeling guilty or just wishing to be gone, he's just like, well, time to go on another crusade. It literally feels like it. No regret, no remorse, no nothing. Guys, just, alright, strap on. We're going on for a second ride. So stupid.
Completely forgive him immediately for being the son of the man who assaulted her. And by the way, still under false pretenses. She doesn't know he's the man who assaulted her yet.
Oh, yeah.
And we just spend all this time just, saying how good of a man he is, how great he is. And then Sane says how the girl who threw herself at Dalen is now attracted to him. And we get this discussion between men about how women are desperate for sex and men talking about sex, even though these are all survivors of sexual assault. And I repeat, Dalen spent 2 chapters after this point feeling bad about Lyra. But when Lyra's upset, Dalen has to force himself into her private space to comfort her. He can't give her the space she deserves. It's entirely just about his feelings. He needs to put himself in the way for his own sake, so he doesn't feel bad. Oh, and in the next chapter, he does the same thing over and over again. He just keeps doing it, putting himself in someone else's space when they're traumatized by his own actions and trying to make himself feel better by comforting them. Isn't bad in the story because it's horrible. It's because Dalen doesn't like it, or Dalen's reminded of the bad things he did to others. And really, it's bad because Dalen should feel upset. Because all this proves is that nothing really changed. All he wants is control of a situation, of people, of his feelings, of the way the world perceives him. Nothing has actually gotten better for this jackass. Nothing ever.
It's just giving him a reason to be.
Nothing he does after this point is for any other purpose and to make himself feel good. So after yet another training arc on how to use magic, this is like chapter 40.
The Dawnist.
We learn Dalen has just more potential than the average Archknight, because of course he does. And by the end of the book, he'll perform stunts that outmaneuver all the other Archknights because he's just a specialist little boy. By the way, the Dawnists were last mentioned in chapter 31. He forgot about them for about 8 chapters, until chapter 39 happens. And Dalen and Lyra go and target the Dawnists, not because there's any evidence something's going wrong, but because they bought something from the pirates. Airships. The same thing, I remind you,
also
that
bought.
Dalen now has 2 of. And that's apparently enough to suspect them, I suppose. Mind you, they are doing something wrong, but they have no reason to know that. They track the Dawnists down to the poorest part of town. We're talking tenements. There's people starving in the streets. And Dalen pretends he wants to join the Dawnists so he can have access to their leader. Okay, fair. Okay, at least he's using his brain somewhat to resolve a problem rather than just slashing them apart. Dalen meets Jenna, who apparently is the leader of the Dawnists. She's only in this one chapter, so don't commit her name to memory too much.
Okay.
Dalen immediately concludes that Jenna just wants to fuck Dalen. And then Daelis the Conqueror, who's in fact also Dalen. Great job, Shad, inviting another woman who only was motivated by sex. Jenna's family was purged by the Conqueror.
Yeah, wait, how does that work? She couldn't have, built an entire following just for wanting to bang one guy. They talk about the whole ordeal with this Loyal's mistreatment, famine, and everything. That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make no sense.
Justifies it because her family was actually part of the rebellion and were going to kill innocent soldiers, as she puts it. She believes that everything Dalen did was justified to create a better society where everyone is equal, where no one starves, and businesses do not hoard wealth from its citizens.
The real question isn't how we Dawnists can love your father, but why everyone else hates him so much. She started to speak matter-of-factly. Daelis the Conqueror sought to make all men equal. His wars were fought to protect his people, his laws were fair, and his punishments just. Do you know it was really the guilds that promoted and funded the majority of the resistance against him? Think about that. They were hoarding most of the wealth in the nation from the majority of its citizens, and when the Conqueror sought to regulate their practices and redistribute their stolen wealth to those who rightly deserved it, they betrayed him for their own ends. Her words grew in passion as she continued, a stark contrast to her natural soft voice. Just look at how much the revolution has benefited the guilds and craftsmen. They've expanded their operations, making the wretched factories that we must work in like slaves. The Conqueror never would have allowed this. He would have protected his people. That should be his name, the Great Protector, not the Great Bastard. The guildmasters have now formed their own great houses, where the true rulers of this nation come from. They're all corrupt, she hissed. Light, they've essentially resurrected the old oppressive aristocracy. Dalen could see her point with that one, regarding the division of the rich and poor, but it neglected the glaring differences between the aristocracy, the Dawn Empire, and the modern day. These falls, anyone could become rich and own land. Is there a single senator that's come from the factories or the tenements? She continued. No. The rich ensure that the rich are elected, who will serve their interests, and the rest of us, the majority of the nation, suffer in poverty.
If in Shad's world, Dalen is like a Stalin, Jenna in theory is more like a evil Bernie Sanders. Dalen then reveals that he is the conqueror and fights against Jenna's belief.
The rich ensured that the rich are elected? Was she actually paying attention to her words? The poor constituted the larger vote. The reason why the rich were in power was because the poor were electing them. Granted, there were more complex reasons behind this, like access to education, but it all ignored the fact that getting someone elected from the factories or tenements didn't ensure they would represent the poor any more than assuming someone who was rich would. She was making moral judgments upon people based on their social status rather than their individual actions. The same thing Dalen had done when he overthrew the aristocracy and executed them.
And so he goes on a long track on how redistributing wealth is bad, how improving society will only lead to bad things, but never actually rejects anything Jenna said about the world needing improvement. He just rants and just listens to his own farts. And Jenna logically is not convinced by it. He doesn't argue politics in a meaningful fashion, but he does convince Jenna to reveal part of her plan, a terrorist attack that will destroy the government.
They're doing it. I said they should be terrorists, and they're going to commit terrorism. They actually. Oh my. Oh. It's like I can see the future. Oh wait, why didn't they do that in the first place? They could have. Oh, this is so. I have no words. We really did go back to the terrorism bit, like. 1-to-1, I said they should have been terrorists. They're now transitioning into terrorists.
Of this one country. Again, without knowing for sure exactly what's happening, Dalen just kills Jenna and all the Darwinists in the area. And by the way, all we know so far is it's a vague terrorist attack.
Doing so would never resurrect the Dawn Empire. They don't have the support. It's more revenge than a proper revolution, Dalen said. The Dawnists want to destroy their oppressors. So I'm guessing that their leader is dead? Yeah, Dalen said flatly. What did he do? She, he corrected. Their leader was a woman? Yep. And you killed her, without a second thought. Why? Maybe the fact that she's planning to destroy the government? I know, but we could have questioned her. That zealot wouldn't have revealed anything. She was too dangerous to be left alive.
He's too dangerous to be left alive.
Now, we do eventually figure what it is. The Dawn is
Fitting,
taking
actually.
airship cores and fashioning an engine in one of the floating isles, and that will send a island about half a kilometer large hurtling into the city. How fast? Not fast at all, actually. I would say there's a sequence that takes place over the course of like 10 or 15 minutes, and the island barely goes half a kilometer. It's very slowly. And I have to crash through a shield, and it moves so slowly, in fact, that most of the Arch Knights don't even see it coming towards them, so it's very, very, very slow. Now, Dalen implies when it crashes down, it's going to cause a massive explosion, but really it looks more like it'll just kind of press down on the Capitol building. You know, it's bad, I guess, but in terms of fantasy plots, I've seen worse. But Dalen concludes everyone...
Wow.
died
I mean, that's a
without
compliment
knowledge,
if I
so
ever heard
he
one.
knows everything, therefore he must be right. So while Lyra goes to ask another man to evacuate the city, Dalen returns to Auric, and finally, Auric figures out Dalen is the Conqueror, because, and I'm not joking here, Dalen didn't have a birth certificate. No, really, that's the smoking gun. Not the massive amount of evidence from before. It's because Dalen...
Several chapters earlier. Hello, Conqueror. Literally near the end. You don't have a birth certificate. You're the Conqueror. Oh my. Oh, that is divine comedy if I ever heard one. The stupidest plot point returns to basically be used as a reveal. Oh.
Is undocumented. Sure, whatever, fine. Thus begins a initially satisfying sequence where Auric goes Man of Steel on Dalen.
Oh!
Chopping him into pieces, ramming him through buildings. By the way, I want to point out that this fight between Auric and Dalen causes more damage to the currently evacuating city than the Dawnists do.
What the hell is the matter with you people? You've caused more damage than that goddamn thing did!
Yeah, the Zilla movie. 1-to-1. Giant lizard causes damage. Government manages to do more damage.
Calm down. Have some candy.
No, I don't want any candy. Leave me alone.
Dalen manages to incapacitate Auric long enough to have his big hero moment against the island coming down, but as he's trying to one-up the Arch Knights...
Honestly, here's something way more interesting. Couldn't he have just taken Dalen and then fought him on the island, making sure to destroy bits and pieces? Maybe their attack might end up pushing the island backwards? That could have been fun.
Auric finds Lyra and tells her the truth about Dalen. And then after one more emotional breakdown where Lyra is, infantilized some more, Lyra goes to beat the shit out of Dalen with Auric. And again, the fight continues. This long fucking fight lasts for 3 chapters straight, and it's just Auric and Lyra beating the crap out of Dalen, all while Dalen figures out some special ability that turns the tide of battle at the last second. When this book started, he felt he should be killed for his crimes. Remember, he threw himself off the side of the earth. But now he's fighting for his life and believes he shouldn't die. In fact, he even argues it's selfish for the Archknights to try to kill him because he's the only one who can save the city from the falling island. He's the only one, not the legions of other Archknights. It has to be just him.
You would think that if the light wanted me dead, it wouldn't have renewed my life, Dalen said. I hate it for that. Auric sneered. Your delusion is amazing. I'm not the one who's deluded, Auric, Dalen urged. You don't want to put me on trial. You want to kill me. This isn't about justice. It's about your own selfish feelings. Who cares that everyone else I've wronged, who've also had loved ones die at my hands, don't get any satisfaction so long as you do? No, Lyra said, her clear and emotionless voice a stark contrast to Auric's. We'll kill you in the name of all your victims. You are a monster, Dalus the Conqueror, and I kill monsters.
These scenes just lack tension also. Like, at one point, Lyra rips Dalen's arms off, but he just regrows them, so it's fine. And no one goes for the killing blow, which is a hit to the head.
You should have gone for the head.
Really?
But then Dalen uses his magic to just get good at swords. No, really. He channels the light into his brain, and that makes him better at swords. Because that's just a thing you can do. And no one else knows how to do it, so he just is now good at swords now.
Great.
As this fight's going on, we find out that the island coming towards the capital is infested with the Shade. How? I don't know. Apparently the Shade and the Daunists are now working together, and the Daunists now have a gun that can shoot Darkstone at the Archknights and so kill them. How? We don't know. How
it's the end of the story. Let's just...
every human being around are working with the Daunists, or how they can control them? No idea. They just work together. And there's no reason to understand how this functions or what it means, other than the fact that Cusack dies in the fight. Okay, and then all the Archknights die, and it really is up to just the main couple of characters to save the day.
Wait, so out of the 4, only the Cusack guy dies? That's weird. You'd think he'd be just as significant.
It is. So you're probably wondering, how does Dalen get out of 2 people fighting him at once? Well, he challenges Auric to a duel without any powers, because apparently the story's so broken, the fight wouldn't end anytime soon if they just both fought each other at full force.
I mean, we already confirmed they're immortal, or rather super healing factors with Dragon Ball Z powers. Like, there has to be a cap, my guy. That's just way too overpowered for... Assuming low to middle level characters using their powers, that's too much.
And Auric wins. Satisfyingly, Dalen loses. But then Auric forgives Dalen. After destroying half the city in a fight with him, Auric's just like, okay, I forgive you. Listen, there's like 5 chapters left of this book. This finale fucking sucks. Let's get this shit out of the way. And by the way, the next chapter is the longest in the book, but it's so little of it's devoted to actually resolving the ongoing catastrophic conflict going on. Dalen goes off and he kills all the Daunists and the Shade, with his +1 magic sword. He's just so good at swords, he just kills all of them. By the way, it took 3 chapters for his one-on-one fight with Auric. It takes like 5 minutes to kill all the bad guys.
Wow.
Whatever. Apparently he could do it, not the army of Archknights who all die, including Cusack, who dies off page, by the way. He doesn't get a death on page.
Seriously?
They just find him dead. They don't even care enough to write the scenes where they kill all the knights. It's just like, okay, goes in, kills them, and yada, yada, yada. After spending so much enormous detail about all this. But then there's the island coming down. So Dalen decides to just turn his sword into a lightsaber, and he cuts the island in half.
How do you like that, Obama? I'm pissed on
the moon! He pulls an Armageddon, and the halves split apart, and it misses the city. And Dalen's, oh no, he's dead, but he's fine, he's all right. A dumb finale. It's like he pulls a new power out of his ass and cuts down an island in half. And none of the other Archknights could do this because they just didn't know to make a big lightsaber sword, I guess. Okay, whatever. However, as Dalen's on the ground seemingly dead, Lyra publicly eulogizes Dalen and says, oh no, he was the conqueror and he just saved all of us. But of course, Shad's self-insert can't die, so he's alive and now has to face consequences for his actions because now everyone knows he's the conqueror. Now that Dalen has saved the city, quote unquote,
The trial.
he submits himself to city's justice, and so at the end of chapter 46, in a 50-chapter book, we finally see Dalen get accountability for his actions. He has an open
And it goes just as
trial
bad as you think?
all the people collect around the continent to come together to talk about what will be done with Dalen. Now, Auric, despite wrecking half a city to destroy Dalen before, speaks up on Dalen's behalf. He's one of the few people who do so early on. Most of the early discussions in this trial are a summation of all the people Dalen has executed. Apparently, he committed 28 million murders. Yeah, seems pretty fucked up how he thinks killing at most 20 or 30 criminals compensates for 28 million murders, but
Barely
I
a
digress.
drop
Dalen is confronted
in
by
the ocean.
countless people he hurt or lives he ruined, until finally, in the second to last chapter, Dalen's victims of assault come forward. And here is the part of the book that everyone fucking knows because of how fucked up it is. The multitude of women who he molested as children, who bore him children, speak on his behalf, while the ones he assaulted who didn't bear children hate him more than the ones who did.
He was cruel and perverted.
How does that work? What? So, if you have kids, you'll be happy. If you don't have kids, you'll be That shouldn't be even a... What is you? Oh my god. Oh. Drink. Drink. Ugh. Straight up, I can't even with this. I'm gonna become like a critical drinker at any rate. Just straight up focusing on alcohol. Maybe if I lose enough brain cells, I'll actually stop focusing on the plot. How does that work? That should not work. That's not how it should be.
One of the older women said as she bore witness on the stand. And from it I fell pregnant. But even hating him so much, I could never hate my own child. People from the palace made sure we were taken care of, and we've had a good life since. I do not think he should be executed for what he has done. I wasn't ready for what was done to me, another woman said, but he was kind in his own way, and from it I was blessed with my daughter, who's been the greatest joy of my life. So I wouldn't change the past, and even with...
I was joking about the whole being with kids happy, and they're actually using it as a point. Getting pregnant and having a kid from assault is apparently something as opposed to... How much we got more of this? How much we... I'm tanking through this, not even talking about it anymore.
With all the other terrible things this man has done, I can't say I want to see him dead. I think he probably deserves it with all the people he's killed, but not for my part. That woman, and only 3 others, shared such moderate testimonies. The rest were far more willing to express stronger feelings. I hate him, a more fragile woman said, quivering as she struggled to get through her testimony. The fact that he's still alive to torment me and my son is too much. You must kill him and let our suffering end. Strangely, it was the women who didn't have any children by him that seemed to despise him more than the others. To them, Dalen had truly ruined their lives, many not ever finding marriage, and a few still bearing deep psychological pain. Dalen wept with his head hanging in shame as they spoke.
Jesus Christ, how do I begin to unpack how deeply fucked up that is? Some have argued that Shad is saying that assault is justified if a child is bared because it's something productive.
Dalen had let them down in so many ways, but would they want to change the past? Had he not slept with their mothers, they wouldn't even be alive, and he was confident they had at least appreciated being born. It was a very strange clash of emotions.
But I think it's a little more general than that. I think the message of this entire book is that if some good comes from great evil, then you can't entirely hate something. Which, no, that's not how it works, actually. Like, I'm sorry, the fact that Hitler liked dogs does not mean Hitler's a good person. He's still Hitler. And then some senator comes up and says, oh, my daughter was kidnapped by Blackheart, and Dalen saved her when he killed Blackheart, so therefore we should charge him with heroism. Yeah, heroism. After 28 million murders and 400 rapes, they give him the charge of being a hero. And they revoke it shortly thereafter, but fuck it. That's still a frustrating scene, isn't it? They go the whole way through when the last note says, "We acknowledge you as a hero, Dalen." Or at least someone who did heroic acts, which is really fucked up and kind of shitty, especially considering it comes shortly after the women who bore him children saying, "You know what, I actually am happy that happened to me because it brought me so much joy having a child." The light, therefore God, wants him alive for some mysterious purpose. And so Dalen is not executed but rather sentenced to lifelong servitude to the Arch Knights, with the condition that if he commits more crimes, he will die. Then again, considering how the Arch Knights are a paramilitary system that defines what is a crime and what isn't, and that Dalen was going to join them anyway, Dalen gets exactly what he wants. It's not a punishment, it's just a reward. Because he saved a few people and stopped a big meteor from hitting the rich people, then he's given exactly what he wants and is allowed to be free. Actually, that's pretty realistic now I think about it. If you save the rich, you do get rewarded for it. So Ark and Dalen are BFFs now, and Dalen is now tasked with becoming part of the ruling class after abusing his powers cruelly for several decades. And the book ends with Dalen being flown off to meet with Lyra, who is now tasked with being his custodian. Which, seems really fucking cruel to do to a survivor assault, make them have to work with their rape. But you know what? The book's over now, so I don't have to fucking think about it. At least it's done. The big question of this book is, did Dalen compensate for his sins over the course of the novel?
Absolutely not.
Do I even need to tell you this? God, no, not even close. That's a fucking stupid question. Why even ask that? Let's make this clear. This is a guy who murdered 28 million people, and it's completely glossed over the course of the novel. The book barely acknowledges the mass death, but in a weird way where it almost implies that some good came out of it. Like modern society was built by Dalen, and they should all be kind of thankful he helped construct it. Dalen made babies, therefore his assault is okay. I feel that kind of sums up the whole of the book in miniature, doesn't it? It's the reason why people even know of this book, because that scene is so infamous, where the young girls, who mind you, averaged under the age of 16, were assaulted and forced to bear children to a despot. I thought a lot about other stories when reading this novel, mainly because I was dreaming of reading something better, more enjoyable. And I fell back to two characters who I feel like Dalen is almost like, who show just how close Dalen could have been to a compelling character and why Shad failed so greatly. Those two characters being Piccolo from Dragon Ball Z, yes, I'm not joking here, and Paul Atreides from Dune. All three are dictators who do terrible things. I do think, though, Piccolo, even though he is a murderer, it's a lot easier to sympathize with Piccolo because the Dragon Balls can bring anyone back to life, so death is not really a permanent fate in Dragon Ball Z.
Yep.
Or Dragon Ball, for that matter. Still, he is a tyrant, a demon king, who has his youth restored to him, and then, after Goku kills him, reincarnates himself through his son, who obtains all of his father's memories and all of his abilities, so it's basically the same person, just an even younger body, before becoming a hero in his own right.
And the craziest part is it takes a long time for him to do so. Like, King Piccolo is like from middle of Dragon Ball, and then afterwards you have the stuff with him at the end. Our Piccolo that we know of at near the end of Dragon Ball. Then we have Z, in which he's like, working, still being like that. It's like, what was it? Somewhere around where Vegeta and the Buu saga, they acknowledge like both guys are good. But again, it takes a long time before we reach that point.
Saga in Dragon Ball Z. Also, Piccolo regenerates from almost any injury and spends most of his time training. In effect, that's the same as Dalen. Although, I would say Piccolo, despite being a demon king and all the evil of Kami personified, is a much nicer guy than Dalen is. Hell, I would say that in the course of this book, Dalen kills more people than Piccolo does over the course of all of Dragon Ball, even counting non-canon movies. But Paul Atreides is the more interesting comparison.
I mean, yeah, if we compare the past stuff.
He's ultimately responsible for killing far, far more people. Like billions across the galaxy, maybe even trillions, compared to
don't know his story.
Paltry 28 million.
I gotta pump those numbers up. Those are rookie numbers in this racket.
Like Dalen, Paul rose to power by overthrowing a corrupt aristocracy. He is revered like a god, has powers that vastly surpass all of his peers, anyone else in the story for that matter, and yet Paul is one of sci-fi's greatest characters while Dalen's a joke. And I think it's because Dalen never tries to redeem himself. He tries to make things better, but it's not the same thing. Shad is afraid of punishing Dalen too much. He's never challenged all that much. There's always a solution. Whereas Frank Herbert has no fear whatsoever ruining Paul's life. His own people turn against him in Doom Messiah after he loses his sight in a terrorist attack designed to defeat him, in accordance with Fremen tradition. He is forced to wander the desert, but in the process becomes a preacher who rises against the very empire he created in Children of Dune. In both cases, Paul and Piccolo do work to directly undo the damages they caused. Paul is never forgiven by the book for his actions. Piccolo is. Dalen doesn't do anything like that. At no point in this book does he ever systemically try to fix anything. If anything, he refuses to. Paul in Children of Dune takes a role in the story like the Daunists do. Through civil upheaval, they and he try to change their respective worlds. Granted, they don't drop a meteor on a city, but Paul did worse during his lifetime. Hell, Dalen did worse during his lifetime. Dalen does not give others the charity he expects others to give him. Effectively, Jenna so brutally, based on his suspicions, despite the light in her heart, is proof he doesn't believe anyone can change if he doesn't like them. He broke an island in two and saved a city. Okay, so what? He only did that by doing what he's done.
I think Finn did that in Adventure Time once.
He can be to anyone who
actually he did it with a meteorite, so
he did because he felt it would make himself look cool, test his abilities, try something new. His biggest defense at his trial isn't that he tried to undo the damage or fix anything. It's just that some good came out of what he did. Ultimately, the only thing that we can tell about Dalen is that he wants to get stronger, wants to punish people he perceives to be evil, and believes that no one could change the government, even if the government was a corrupt force, because when he tried it, he turned out to be a monster. Because apparently, if you try to fix things, you become a dictator, and not like all the thousands of times where someone has tried changing things and it didn't happen. But also, if he doesn't like a rule, he'll just ignore it and go on and do what he wants anyway. So apparently it's bad to reject the government or try to fix things, but it's fine to reject the government if it's Dalen doing it, or Dalen's friends doing it. Seems kind of self-contradictory, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I've talked about a lot of things, the fights, the morality, all that, but all that feeds into one core problem that sums up everything wrong with this book. It is so fucking boring.
Thank you.
70% of this book is redundant or unnecessary.
I haven't read this thing, and just by watching this and hearing the amount of nonsense is just like, oh, I'd rather read the goddamn script for episode 8 of The Last Jedi than even go out of my way to find this book and read it, much less the audio book and listen to it. That is how atrociously boring this is.
Mean it. 70. This novel is over 500 pages long, and it could have been 200. Easy, and even that might have been too long. Even ignoring all the scenes of the characters just inorganically talking about the world building, most of what happens does not further the plot or characters. So many scenes do nothing but pad the book. Hell, even the trial pads the book. Even the way magic is used feels unnecessary. Why do we need a scene where Dalen figures out how to turn his sword into light? What does it actually do in the plot? What value does that contribute? Why do we need a sequence where Dalen binds magic to his brain to make him smart or get better at swords? Just find another solution. Have him just, it doesn't actually resolve anything because the fight's resolved to a one-on-one duel without any magic anyway. So there's no value in that sequence. Hell, most of the fight is useless because Dalen can just die and get better. Death loses meaning for Dalen specifically. No one else, just Dalen. So why have detailed sword fights at all if we know he'll just get better? What value does it have?
He's immortal.
Regenerate. What's the value in a sword fight? Use something else that's more effective at destroying an enemy that can regenerate. Why does Dalen never fight any opponents that are at his level until the last fifth of the book? Why write the book like that? Yeah, I know it's the way Shad wrote the book, but why not have enemies who can actually give a challenge? Or why have regeneration at all? Why make the magic so extremely OP if it just makes all the scenes feel tensionless? What value does that have? And I mean it. At a certain point, it
Probably
feels
to
like Galen's just
extend the
finding new ways
fights
to use
in the
magic
most
no one's ever
boring
done
way
before,
possible.
despite decades of training, and he has like what, a few weeks to figure it out. How does he get better at magic than the Grand Masters and the people who've done it for decades? And listen, I mean this also truthfully. I'm glad they killed Cusack off, because that means the finale wouldn't be bogged down in the same conversations he had about food or sex for the last 40 chapters before that. I mean it. Every scene with this loser was the same. Every scene with Lyra is the same. Every scene with Auric is the same. You could have boiled it down to 2 or 3 occasions happening throughout the whole book, and you would have lost nothing. Because even then, that might have been too much, because no further ground is gained with how many scenes loop back to the same conversations over and over and over and over again. The whole book functions primarily as wish fulfillment for Shad, to have his badass hero who does cool things and fights, but it gets so redundant. After the first fight scene, I've seen all the fight scenes. That's it. The first scene where he kills the mugger in the alley with the brutality and all that. Every fight's like that. I know the technique is different, but they all feel the same. They all read the same. They're just
So,
a case
copy
of a
pasta.
guy who is a fraction as powerful as Shad. I'm sorry, a fraction as powerful as Galen getting executed brutally. The only scene that has any value is when Dalen's identity is revealed and his friends fight him. But even then, that scene drags on for so fucking long.
Yeah,
actually
5 whole
lose track of the real
chapters.
conflict of this moment. The
3 whole
giant rock
chapters.
from space hurtling down. What value is the rest of the book if the giant meteor trying to destroy the city holds no tension? Nothing of any value happens in this book. And listen, I see no reason why at this point Shad would not take my feedback seriously, as I'm such an honest, truth-telling person.
Where an online ideological activist posing as a media critic has tried criticizing me for my thoughts in the recent Superman trailer, where he constantly lied about what I was saying in my initial reaction, and I called him out. His response is to continue the slander, double down, and lie even more. Claiming that I can't take criticism because people lying about you is just fair criticism, of course. And exposing them when they lie about you, that's just me having a thin skin, according to them. It's kind of interesting how much these extremist, ideologically obsessed culture warriors want to be able to drag your reputation and name through the mud.
God, shut up, you clanker-loving Griffin loser. This mongrel, man. Sheesh. Sit, spit, like, zip it.
Try and mock you for responding to it when defending yourself. It's actually quite pathetic.
I am reasonably confident Shad would not actually make another multi-hour response to what I said about him, because that ended so well last time. Some, like Crispy's Tavern,
Flop ratio, flop, massive ratio, flop.
have kind of accredited me for destroying the Night's Watch channel.
Many people have torn apart Shad's Superman takes and his Mario takes, including Anthony Gramuglia. This guy comments on a lot of my videos, and I've tried my best to figure out how to pronounce his name. It's just not happening for me, guys. I'm really sorry. Anyway, Ant.
You're forgiven, man.
Stream to Shad's reaction stream of the trailer. He tore apart what Shad said. And look, at this point, Shad's learned his lesson. When he responded to Jack Saint, he just made things a hell of a lot worse for himself. He became a laughing stock. I mean, no one wants to do that twice, and he was not about to make the same mistake. Shad took a deep breath, acted like a grown man, and allowed 2 people to have 2 different opinions on the Superman movie. Now,
Did they?
Kidding, he made a 2-hour live stream about
2
it.
hours!
This is retarded nonsense. There are more statistical...
Bruh. Little yapping clanker lover, straight up.
I know that it perfectly. That's a silly dumb. There's lots of silly dumb things, but it's just so funny that Anthony is like, "Look, I can't believe you accept this."
That was... Jesus, this guy might be worse than Lily Orchard.
Oh, damn!
He took down the aforementioned Lily Orchard. He can take down Shad, too. This is just another body. So, he made another live stream and controversial ratio Shad once more. I think this final stream absolutely destroyed whatever reputation Night's Watch had left, because after this, the Night's Watch channel just collapsed. I mean, I don't know if it was
Really?
caused by all these people making fun of Shad, but I'm sure it didn't help. The channel at this point gets pennies in terms of revenue, with only a few thousand views to its name.
I wouldn't go so far as to say that. I think Shad's refusal to listen to feedback is what got him in that position. Also, for the record, you see my name,
Understandable.
Ramulia. The G is kind of silent, just to make it clarity. But good attempt, though. I'll give you that, Crispy. And this is for Shad specifically. Yeah, I'm talking to you right now.
Even had
If you
to
were a
have his
competent
name
writer,
corrected.
you would have taken feedback. Any person who was actually giving you honest feedback would have told you these scenes are redundant. This book drags on for too long. It doesn't hold any meaning to the audience to see these fights keep dragging.
But he's a clanker-loving incel. What do you expect from someone like that? Oh, someone has a different opinion? No, it has to be my opinion or no opinion. That's it with them. They don't do these types of stuff. Like, the guy uses AI unironically and calls himself an artist. Granted, there are others who also use it and are officially affirmed to as artists, making me wonder and question why exactly I even pursued this degree in the first place. But, no, the guy's a loser. What was it? The guy's straight up a loser. Case closed.
Dragging out. But you didn't listen to feedback, almost certainly. You didn't listen to people disturbed by the book. And I know he tried to write a book where it's like, oh, how far can I push a character morally before he's unforgivable? That only works, though, if there are tangible consequences for their actions. In a book where there are no consequences, nothing they do holds any weight. Ergo, nothing they will ever do is all that irredeemable, because nothing ever ties in with all that shit. This is a case of a person who was so successful, I think, at YouTube, they convinced themselves they could write a story and never get any feedback to improve themselves. Even now, Shad has rejected every single review of his book. I'm sure he's going to respond to this too, because he's already responded to me once before. I expect another one. He will never take harsh criticism of his work. Well, here's the harsh criticism. Only about 5 of the 50 chapters actually furthered the plot. Everything else could have been chopped out, and nothing of value would have been lost. So you're probably wondering, how would I make a book that's only 5 chapters? Figure out a better fucking plot. Or better yet, make it so there's actually tension in your story, or conflict, or that Shad has to actually reckon with the consequence of his actions. That doesn't center, Galen has to reckon with the consequence of his actions. It's so easy to confuse Galen with Shad while talking about this. It's kind of hard not to see someone who talks the exact same way as your protagonist as kind of the same person. My apologies there, buddy. It's important to actually write a story that takes yourself out of the equation. It is his power fantasy. He attached evil morality to it, but I think he got too close to the narrative to objectively see what needed to be written about the character. And as a result, you get what you get. A book that is, in gentle terms, absolute dog water.
Oh boy, this is gonna be interesting. Is it actually gonna be?
I heard some discussions that was happening. I need you to know that in my hands right now is a paperback copy of Chronicles of Everfall, Shadow of the Conqueror by Shad M. Brooks.
God, yes.
Oh, God.
Yes.
Which I picked up for $3 while high on anesthesia.
I love everything about this. I actually bought this comic book when it came out for full price. I know.
Why did
you guys are like masochistic to a degree that fascinates me. I want to
But no, this book is so painful.
I bought it for a potential video that I don't know if I'll ever actually make, but
I'm making it. It's coming out.
Beautiful.
And he made it. He made it. Straight up, he made it.
Do you see?
Oh, that is so golden. I mean, what can I say about Shadiversity? This thing that we just watched. I don't even know what I can say about this. It's atrocious. It's straight up boring. It makes you wonder why exactly it was even made in the first place. Overall, point in case, even for $3 at a discount, I would not have bought this thing. And I'm glad I did not read it, much less listen to it. This was a satisfying, quote-unquote, coverage of it. Gramuglia? I'm just gonna call him Anthony. Easy to remember, just first name. I'm not gonna go by two names. I guess Anti would be funny to use. Or AG. AG. An acronym for him. Either way, though, he made a perfect coverage for this thing. It's... Thank the Lord he did it. He saved me a lot of brain cells and agony. Man lost additional hope he didn't even know he had. But I had it. And I lost it. Call an ambulance and the mental psychic ward for Shadiversity.